Ready, Susan? Good morning and welcome to the April 23rd Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. Madam Clerk?
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following properties affected by the improvements for the Manji Ranch Road over Coyote Creek Bridge project. Agency negotiator Vanessa Cothran, Docket Engineering Incorporated, negotiating parties and respective property APNs are A. Anna Gutierrez as to APN 066-024-045, B. Constance Marie Freeland, trustee of the Living Trust of Constance Marie Freeland as to APN 066-024-019, C. Julian Revocable Trust et al. As to APN 066-009-008, and D. Clifford Johnson and Beverly Brischnig Johnson as to APN 066-009-009.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none?
Item 2, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization Calaveras County Sheriff's Management Unit.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none?
Item 3, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none?
Item 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization Calaveras County Deputy Sheriff's Association.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none?
And item 5, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Donald Otten v. County of Calaveras, case number ADJ 9561858 and ADJ 101-39270.
Public comment? Seeing none? That concludes. We will go into closed session, returning at 9 o'clock. Thank you. Good morning and welcome back to the April 23rd Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. If you're able, would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will start off with announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? Supervisor Mills.
So hopefully with Kathy being here, she'll announce her fly-in today. So we'll do during public comment. For this Saturday, if anyone's interested, there's also a Taste of Calaveras later in the afternoon at Couts Vineyard, sponsored by the Angels Camp Business Association. And reminder that the Hot Copper Car Show occurs on Saturday, May the 4th. We have a total of 5 manufacturers that will be there with their new specialized vehicles, and we also have a driving instructors course that's going to be available for people that are interested. So come on down to Copperopolis on Saturday, May the 4th.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Mills. Are there any announcements from staff? Madam Assessor.
Oh, I guess I'm still.
Oh,
I get you.
Kathy, you can go up. You'll go next, Kathy.
I'll lead with the bad
You are.
news, and then we can have the good news and the cute goats. Leslie Davis, County Assessor. Mr. Chair, honorable members of the board, I'm here today to let you know about a problem that's occurring in my office. It's going to have a domino effect when you begin to hear about it. A couple of weeks ago, I discovered that we had a breakdown in some of our supplemental assessments and our roll corrections. And what has happened is that we have inadvertently pushed refunds out to people who actually owe money. And so we have stopped all of those processes while we try to determine what caused it and what it will take to get it fixed. This is, of course, the worst time of the year for us for this. Not only are my attentions diverted to budget, but we're in the midst of trying to close an assessment roll. Nonetheless, I want you and everybody who's watching or listening to know that we are doing everything we can to get this fixed as expeditiously as possible.
I didn't understand. We have paid out money?
We have paid out money to people who actually owe money.
So one, about the ballpark of that, and two, do you think they're going to pay us back?
Well, I think that...
how does
that work? I would actually have to ask the tax collector to come over and explain to you how it works, but essentially, we will correct the mistake. We will send that correction to the auditor. When we found the problem, I did ask the auditor to stop all roll corrections and supplementals until we figured it out, and she accommodated that request. So once we have figured out what we did wrong, we'll send that down to the auditor. She will issue a bill to get that refund amount back. We do have some property owners who are honest, called, said, I don't think I deserve this, and sent the check back, but not everyone. So those who did not send the check back will get a bill, and then they will get the bill that they should have received in its place.
If I might just jump in and ask, this is for announcements, not discussions, but I think that this is something we probably ought to have agendized and dig into, perhaps at our next meeting. We'll ask council and assess whether this should be a closed session item or not.
When is your next meeting?
May 14th, that's a ways out.
Okay.
So we may need to deal with this sooner.
No, I won't be here next week. I have to be at the State Board of Equalization, so I was making sure that your next meeting wasn't next week. And by that time, I don't know that I will know the extent of it. We are pouring through a report that is 770 pages long while we try to figure out exactly which properties were affected.
This gives us a couple weeks, and we need to find out the extent of what's going on, so.
So I just
We're
want
gonna
you
need to
alerted
agendize.
because I'm certain that you will get some phone calls and you should be aware of the problem and be aware of the fact that we are working diligently to get it fixed.
Thank you for putting this on our radar, Leslie.
I mean, my feeling is that she's already said it. There's nothing closed session about it unless the CAO and the assessor and the treasurer feel it is, and I'd leave it up to them.
I would agree. Supervisor Mills?
No, no comment.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Have a good meeting.
Kathy? Give us some happy
After
news.
that wonderful news,
We're not exactly sure what that
before I
means, so-
tell you about our wonderful news, I want to put a plug in. After listening to the Pledge of Allegiance, I fly a little blue and white airplane. You may see it out in the mornings. And I was over at San Andreas Elementary School, which is my alma mater, and I saw these kids running around the track. So I thought, well, isn't that nice? So I circled them twice. Then I wiggled my wings and went away. The next Friday, I did the same thing. When I was put my airplane away, when I got back, I got this telephone call from this very stern lady. This is Debbie from San Andreas Elementary School. Every Friday morning, our kids run around the track, sing the national anthem, and salute the flag. And I thought, wow, for a little podunk school like San Andreas, that is a pretty special thing. And then she said, and the last 2 Fridays, this little blue and white airplane has flown over, and I just wanted to call and say thank you. So guess where I go on Friday mornings if I'm here, if the weather's good. But that was just such a small town thing that it just, it was amazing. But the reason I'm here today is for our airport day, which is this Saturday. This is sponsored by, of course, the county and the Experimental Aircraft Association group here at our airport, which sponsors our Young Eagle program. At this, we do airplane scenic rides. I'm one of the pilots, and there's 4 or 5 others. We volunteer. The only way we can do this on a volunteer basis is if we receive absolutely no money. We have to volunteer our airplanes, our time, our gas, the whole 9 yards. And we have to be signed up with, I have to get everybody signed up with the FAA ahead of time. So it's all done legally. And we've done that, and we do that, and we make money for the Young Eagle program. It's an incredible day. I hope that some of you anyway can come out and join us. We'll have a pancake breakfast sponsored by the Lions Club down in the lower end of the county. We have Boy Scouts have a table, and our EAA has a lunch thing too. The airport makes no money on this. The county makes nothing on this except goodwill and supporting our local Young Eagle program. So thank you, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Keep the Snoopy plane flying.
Some good news.
Madam Clerk?
So I would like to announce the 2019 Senior of the Year call for nominations. The Calaveras Senior Providers Network is accepting applications to honor those that provide valuable volunteer services in Calaveras County. The eligibility requirements are that you must be a resident of Calaveras County, you must be 60 years of age or better, an active volunteer in Calaveras County in any capacity, and not a previous Senior of the Year winner. There will be a luncheon to honor the nominees and announce the winner. It will be held on May 21st from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Dodosa Ranch in Burson. And the deadline for submitting any nomination is Friday, April 26th. You can submit that to Susan at stomasic, that's STOMASICH.com, or you can provide it to me at the BOS Clerk of the Board, and we will get that to Susan. The other is that the Calaveras County Fish and Game Commission will be holding their annual Kids Fishing Day in Murphy's Park on Saturday, May 4th from, I think, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it's free for kids under the age of 8th grade, and there's a lunch that's provided to the participants.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further announcements, we will move forward and, we'll report out in closed session. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome. Okay, so report of today's closed sessions. Item 1, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following properties affected by the improvements for the Manji Ranch Road over Coyote Creek Bridge project. Agency negotiator is Vanessa Cothran, Dockin Engineering Incorporated. Negotiating parties and respective property APNs are as follows. Anna Gutierrez as to APN 066-024-045. Constance Marie Freeland, trustee of the Living Trust of Constance Marie Freeland, as to APN 066-024-019. Julian Revocable Trust et al., as to APN 066-009-008. And Clifford Johnson and Beverly Britschnig Johnson as to APN 066-009-009. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Sheriff's Management Unit. There was no reportable action taken. Item 3, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association. There was no reportable action taken. Item 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with county designated labor negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Deputy Sheriff's Association. There was no reportable action taken. And item 5, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Donald Otten v. County of Calaveras, case number ADJ 9561858 and ADJ 101-39270. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you very much. Now, I move on to our we'll move on to receive a presentation from Calaveras County 4-H, which is I am a former 4-H'er and a parent, and this is one of my favorite presentations of the year as we go into fair, and I think we might be the only supervisor's chamber I know that lets the animals actually into the chambers for the presentation. And I don't hear any chickens crowing this year, so let's go. Madam Clerk, how do we do the presentation? Or come on up. I think last year I got talked into buying a chicken by the end of this meeting.
Hello, thank you for having us today. My name is Rosemary Giannini, and I'm the program representative for Calaveras 4-H. It's my privilege that I get to work with the young people and the volunteers who are here today, who are going to share what they're learning in 4-H. But first, I just wanted to speak briefly about the positive effects of 4-H in our community. In Calaveras County, we currently have hundreds of kids and over 50 adult volunteers involved in the 4-H program. Through our community club program, we provide opportunities for youth and adults to work together to create sustainable community change. Additionally, our youth and volunteers participate in other programs such as our summer camp program and outreach like Ag Awareness Day. Through these partnerships, youth and adult learn, grow, and work together as a catalyst for positive change. Our goal as a program is to help youth reach their fullest potential while advancing the field of youth development. Research shows that youth who participate in 4-H are 4 times more likely to contribute to their communities. Additionally, they are nearly 2 times more likely to participate in science programs and nearly 2 times more likely to make healthy choices. We would not have a 4-H program in Calaveras County without the continuous support of our Board of Supervisors. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the youth in our community. So without further ado, I'd like to pass things over to our kids and our volunteers so they can tell you what they're learning through 4-H. So, I don't know who will first. Did you want them one at a time?
Each of the kids is going to speak?
Just briefly. Do you guys want to come up? Maybe we can have all the...
Brent, you want to go first? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Brent Andall, and I'm doing goats in 4-H, and I'm doing woodworking and Lego.
Can you tell them anything about your goats?
My goat is a Nigerian dwarf.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you.
Brent, good job.
My name's Claire, and I'm showing a goat too in 4-H, and I'm also doing woodworking, but I'm not doing Legos, and my goat's a Nigerian dwarf.
Well, thank you. And how long have you both been being in 4-H?
I've been in 3 years, and this is her first.
Thank you very much. Are those you have your goats with you? Madam Clerk, can you open this so we can take a look? Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming up.
Hi, Hi, my name is Anastasia Sharp. This is my 7th year in 4-H, and this year for 4-H I'm doing goats, rabbits, and lambs, and woodworking. And this is Dixie, my goat, and that's Trixie, my other goat. And something that I enjoy about 4-H is you don't only get to hang out with your animal, you get to hang out with your friends' animals who are also in the 4-H group.
My name's Shannon Sharp. I'm the current Mountain Ranch 4-H co-club leader, thanks to Autumn, I do it all the time, and all joining me as leader this year. Our club has grown from 5 members, where we almost folded as a club and joined San Andreas, and now we have over 20 members, 10 families, and growing. And most of our club are young members from most of them are first years and mini members and so on. So we're very honored to be here. Thank you for your support. Our family has learned so much and grown together. Going to fair is one of our highlights, so we invite you to come. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had our successful chili cook-off. We invite you to come and join us next year for that. So,
Well, Ms. Sharp, thank you so much for all the work, and all the parents that you guys are really putting together a great program, and
thank you.
the result is these wonderful children.
Hi, I'm Adrian Wood, and the projects I did for 4-H are lambs, Legos, and woodworking. And what I learned in lambs is how to walk the lamb and different breeds there are and different parts. And this is what I made in woodworking. Yes.
What's a couple of things you did this year?
I don't know. I did the...
Tell them.
The stuff I did for the community services I did for 4-H is presentation day, a toy drive to sort toys by age, and a color run. There.
What's your goal for next year?
My goal is to try and join the GOAT project too. So,
Are you looking forward to fair?
huh? Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
I bet.
Thank you.
Tell them about your project.
I'm doing lambs this year, and I'm also doing woodworking. I made a bird feeder in woodworking, and
And what's your name and what club are you part of?
my name is Callie Andel, and I'm part of Mountain Ranch 4-H.
And I'd like to invite you to the county fair.
I'd like to invite you to the county fair.
Anything else? Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. And are you showing a lamb at the fair this year, Ms. Andel?
Yes.
So you're encouraging your board of supervisors to show up to the auction as well?
Yes.
There you go.
What you have here for them? Tell them what you have for them. Speaking to the mic. I have my buyer letters for you.
I have my buyer letters for you.
There you go. There you go.
You brought it up. You set the stage.
Thank you again for your support, and
already gone
thank
quite
you,
a few.
Rosemary. Yeah,
Is that our presentation?
it is.
Well,
yes.
come on up. We'd
Okay.
love to get a photo with you guys up here. Supervisors, you want to come down and I'll get in this?
Lorelai, you want to walk shadow? Here, grab her leash and take him in. Go inside. Come in. Keep going, Lorelai.
Rita, come on, scoot in, please. Okay. Take a picture with this?
That's Amber's.
Wait, do you want me to take a picture with this? No, I don't mind. Everybody go back.
They never stay long enough for a picture.
They don't.
I can't believe how busy those are. Can you believe it?
Okay, everybody get back together so we take one more picture. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, it went black. Oh, it's back. Okay. Okay, ready? Okay, smile. Okay.
I'll see you guys all front. You guys did a nice presentation. Thank you. You did your leadership for us.
I'll be there, those clean kids from my area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
God, didn't you? All right, how are we going to top that one in this meeting, ladies and gentlemen?
So this morning, when I turned down Mountain Ranch Road the first time, and I've turned down it many times, I had to stop because a rooster was crossing the road. So I think that was my introduction to 4-H this morning.
Well, it's good to get an early start, Marina.
Did you ask it why?
It's, Chair,
There it is.
it's kind of interesting when you're in downtown Vallecito, and if you ever hear me talking on the phone, you'll always hear chickens crowing in the background. They are my chickens. They're the Vallecito chickens. They go all over the town site. So if you've ever been there, it's kind of interesting to watch chickens going everywhere in the town.
Thank you. I want to, once again, thank everybody for supporting 4-H, and Frog Jump is coming, so those kids are getting pumped up. All right, now we get to move to number 7, not nearly as uplifting, but
It was just.
Madam Clerk?
So, Mr. Chair, would you like to ask for public comment on that item?
Absolutely. Would anybody like to make some public comment on the recognition of 4-H program? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next
Thank you.
item.
Okay, item 7 is from the District Attorney to proclaim April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
Good morning, Barbara Uke, District Attorney, and I'm also here with Kelly Coyne of the Crisis Center. We did not bring our goats. Did you bring your goat?
No, I don't even have a goat.
No, but she does have other gifts for you in a little bit. We are here to request that you recognize April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Sexual assault is a tough topic. It's tough to talk about. It's tough to hear about, but it's reality, and it's reality in Calaveras County. Our purpose in bringing the proclamation is to bring awareness to the problem of sexual assault in Calaveras County, and hopefully let victims know that there is support and what resources there are in Calaveras County. It's really an opportunity for us to highlight some of the resources and support that we do have. And of course, by letting victims know that maybe we can give them some hope and let them know that they can come forward and receive the support that they deserve. So, first I want to talk about our SART team, our sexual assault response team. Some of you have been around, know, and are very familiar with our local SART. It's a multidisciplinary partnership that has been going on for many, many years. And it is made up of law enforcement, frontline law enforcement, my office, the Mark Twain Hospital Healthcare District, the Crisis Center, and two very dedicated sexual assault forensics examiners. We have Jen Josies and Kathy Boyle, who have worked countless hours, responding at all hours to a victim in need. And the importance of our SART team and the ability to have our local examiners be able to respond is really extraordinary, and something I just want to reemphasize to those of you who might not be aware. Before we had our SART team and the ability to respond locally, victims of sexual assault in Calaveras County who needed a forensic exam, the physical exam, had to be transported out of county, either self-transport or in the back of a patrol car, to an urban area. Frequently they went to UC Davis in Sacramento, and that's a long drive. That's a long drive for anybody, and if you can imagine, if you were a victim of sexual assault, how much longer the drive would be. And they would have to be escorted into the hospital, into the waiting room, the emergency room, with a cop, and all eyes are on it. Everybody kind of knows what happened, or maybe they're thinking of something even worse than their heads, and have the exam there, and then be transported back. So if you think about the hours, the toll on the victim, the cost to the county, those exams were very expensive, $2,500 to $3,000 each. And then later on, my office is having to track down who the examiner was and try to get him to come here to testify. So there's all these ongoing monetary costs, and of course the human cost to the victim themselves. Because we can do these locally, they cost $500, and it's done here. We have it worked out with the hospital. They give us a room. We are in the process of creating another space to have exams, where victims don't have to go through that same type of intake process. They do not have to travel. It is smaller, more private, and much, much easier on victims. And of course, if you think about the monetary aspect as well, it's much better for the county. And we also have our Children's Advocacy Center. This is our brand new facility that opened up in Valley Springs as a partnership through the Mark Twain Healthcare District and the Crisis Center and my office. We are working towards being a fully accredited location, and which means we'll be bringing in law enforcement and the CPS piece. That is something to look forward down the road. So we have our ability to have our interviews at this location. Also, we have the children's therapy at this location. The other big resource for victims is, of course, the Crisis Center. And Kelly, I'll let you talk about that a little bit later. And of course, my office and my victim services piece. So there are a lot of resources out there for victims and support. The other purpose in bringing the proclamation is to celebrate and to give thanks. So, it's an opportunity to celebrate the strength of victims and the strength it takes to come forward, to report, and to carry on. We still have a lot of victim shaming and victim blaming that occurs. And so if you think about that, it's really extraordinary when victims can come forward. And I think of victims as heroes, because coming forward, that's the first step in stopping the abuse, okay? It takes a lot of strength sometimes and resilience to do that. Sometimes victims face pushback from their families or their friends, and it's just easier to sometimes just to stay sheltered and not reach out, because then you have the spotlight on you. So we should be celebrating victims who have the strength and resilience to come forward and to go forward. And personally, I want to giving thanks to our partners, especially the Crisis Center, because they see more than we do. Because victims can come forward and get help, and they don't have to report to law enforcement until they're ready. They only have to report if they want to and if they are ready. So the victims, the Crisis Center actually sees a lot more victims than we do. And I think that's important. I think it's important for victims to know that they can come forward and get help that doesn't mean that they have to report to law enforcement and go through a public process. Especially want to give thanks to Jen Josies and Kathy Boyle, who are, as I described earlier, our sexual assault forensic examiners. They respond at all hours, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Jen kind of jokes, I don't know if it's really a joke, but she tends to get called out on her birthday. It happens about every year. She for whatever reason, she ends up getting called out on her birthday. And she comes, and she responds because she has to. It's her duty, and she feels it's her duty, and it's her duty and a commitment to our community that keeps her going. And I want to give thanks to my staff, my deputy DAs, and my support staff, and my victim services staff, who go forward and help victims get through the process. It's difficult. It's hard. We had a situation this morning in my office right before we came over here. The stuff that we have to listen to and process, and we have to in turn be strong for victims and do what we do to seek justice for victims. So that is the purpose of our proclamation. And I know Marita always likes numbers, so I think Kelly brought them along with some gifts for you to commemorate and bring awareness to Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Good morning. So I'm the director of the Calaveras Crisis Center and the Children's Advocacy Center that Barbara talked about. One of the new things that we're doing at the Children's Advocacy Center, the whole program's kind of new, and it's specifically for child victims of crime, but we're also going to start to integrate sexual assault victims when appropriate. Kathy Boyle, that Barbara mentioned, is an expert in this field, and she is the manager of the Calaveras, the Children's Advocacy Center, which is a huge coup for us because she's a nationally known trainer. She trains CPS workers all over the United States, and she actually was one of the expert witnesses in the John Benet Ramsey trial. So it's a really amazing resource that we now have in Valley Springs, in Calaveras County, to help children and victims of sexual assault. So soon, probably in the next month, we will be able to do exams there as well. So any child that is a victim of a crime, especially any kind of a sexual assault crime, won't have to go to the hospital. They don't have to go to the sheriff's department to be interviewed. They can do this in this very child-friendly, very homey, very safe space, and they can have the exam there too, and then they can move directly into therapy, which is kind of the process that you want children to have. You don't want there to be additional trauma in addressing the crime that happened. So if any of you want to come and see it, let me know, because it's really a cool place. It's a house that's been there for years. There's a huge history. We have a kitchen. We make cookies.
There's a therapy dog.
Oh yeah, there's a therapy dog. So no goats. But, we could have goats. Anyway, so, that's one of the new services we provide. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Crisis Center, we have a rape crisis program. It is expanding. We're opening a new office in Murphy's in a few weeks, and we're in the process of training 6 new volunteers that will be available to respond. And one of the things it's a cool thing, but it's not. We have a lot of business associations reaching out to us right now because they're concerned about the number of sexual assaults that they're hearing about related to businesses and bars and things like that, and so they're reaching out and wanting to partner. So it's a good thing that people are starting to talk about that. When you don't talk about it, it becomes more prevalent. When you put it under the carpet and people don't see it, then it can't be addressed. So I have some numbers from 2018. The Crisis Center saw 123 adult victims of sexual assault and 44 child victims of sexual assault. Now that is not in any way, shape, or form the total number of sexual assaults that happened or have happened in the past or victims that we have in the county, because we know that 60% don't ever report. It's too embarrassing. Society tends to blame victims of sexual assault. They question them. What were you doing? What were you wearing? How come you didn't do something safe, instead of actually questioning the perpetrator, which is something that culturally we have done for decades, hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's very sad. I think it's getting better with the Me Too movement that's going on. You see on TV, they're talking about, lots of people talking about sexual assault, and it's ugly and we don't want to hear it, but getting it out there is, moving that energy forward. So of the 123 adult victims, Marita always likes to hear what districts they're from. So 49 of them were from District 1, 15 from District 2, 9 from District 3, 18 from District 4, and 32 from District 5. And in the children, regarding the children, 18 from District 1, 6 from District 2, 3 from District 3, 7 from District 4, and 10 from District 5. So it's a pretty consistent that about 40% are coming from District 1, 20% from District 5, 12% from District 2, 7% from District 3, and 15% from District 4. So we come up here and we talk about this one time a year. We need to talk about it more. And I would love to have a conversation with especially the supervisors from District 1 and District 5 about, how can we address these things in the community? How can we do this all year long? Not just talk about it one time a year, not just bring the numbers one time a year, but make Calaveras County a place where we don't accept this. This is not what we want to happen here, and we're going to support victims in reporting, and we're going to make it safer, and we're going to talk about it and look at it and, pull that rug up, see what's under it, and figure out how we can stop it. One of the ways to stop it is to address it, because many times when children in particular have sexual assault trauma in their childhood, it's an indicator for all kinds of things, including becoming a perpetrator. So one of the reasons that the Children's Advocacy Center was so important, and one of the things that Barbara really wanted to address there, is get these kids help, get them appropriate help quickly so they can move on and become good citizens in their future. Because if you don't address it, if people don't look at it, if they don't let the child talk about it, if they don't have the appropriate therapy, there is a really good chance that they can go out and with that anger, they can harm other people. So the best way to change the culture is to address it when it happens. And eventually, then it will stop happening as much. So I have some gifts. I thought Sean locked it. So these are coffee mugs, and they're for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and they are conversation starters. So I always like to pose a challenge. So you can use them for water or tea or whatever it is that you drink. Use them, take them out in public with you, and tell people what they are. And, it seems like something small, but it does take courage for someone to start that conversation. And I know you can do it. A talking point could be, do you know that there is a lot of sexual assault in Calaveras County? Do you know that there is a problem here? And there are ways that you can help. Call the crisis center, call the DA's office, see if if you want to volunteer, if you want to hear more about what goes on and how you can help. That would help us immensely, and it would start people talking. You're the leaders, so start the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, my turn. I don't know if I'm going to get through it. Well, to Barbara and Kelly, I thank you for the SART program and starting it. I remember the tour of the hospital. For the two of you, the goal's always been the victim. But I can't read it. Here.
I know this is especially difficult. I think many of us know family members and friends who have been affected. And you're absolutely right. If they can't get help early, they will become a predator. The anger will come out in so many ways that you can't understand. I think it's one of those things that's even touched my life to some degree, and people around me. So I would like to read the proclamation, and if there's public comment, then we can have an opportunity to discuss it. So this is a proclamation declaring April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Whereas the high rate of sexual violence in California must be brought to public focus because it cannot be reduced until it is openly recognized and addressed. And whereas every citizen of Calaveras County is directly or indirectly affected and impacted by sexual violence. And whereas children and young adults are most at risk of sexual assault. And whereas during the 2018 calendar year, the Calaveras Crisis Center assisted 123 survivors of sexual assault. I like that word, survivors. Including 26 survivors under the age of 18. During the same period of time, the Calaveras Children's Advocacy Center provided counseling services for an additional 44 children who were victims of sexual abuse. And whereas the statistics indicate that 60% of sexual crimes go unreported, and whereas victim shaming and blaming is a barrier to reporting sex crimes, and it is important to recognize the heavy burden of sadness carried by victims of sexual assault, as well as the challenges faced by survivors and their families and friends as they struggle to cope. And whereas the courage, strength, and resilience of all survivors should be supported and recognized as an inspiration for others. And whereas the Calaveras County Sexual Assault Response Team, SART, which includes the Sheriff's Office, Angels Camp Police, the District Attorney's Office, the Resource Connection, Calaveras Human Service Agency, Mark Twain Medical Center, and 2 highly trained and dedicated forensic examiners, is committed to helping victims of sexual assault crimes with a coordinated and effective response.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this before we call the vote? Hal?
Yeah, Al Sagala, Taxpayer Association. I'm quite impressed with this. And I have a question. This appears to be a crime, and these are criminals that are doing this thing. And it seems like there should be prosecution of these criminals, and there should be jail time for these crimes. And perhaps the district attorney can elaborate on what's being done in that way. Thank you.
Let's continue on public comment. Bonnie?
Now, I'm not sure these numbers are still true, but when I worked in this area, I was aware that, conservatively speaking, 1/3 of all females and 1/4 of all males in America will be victimized sexually as a child or as an adult. And I would venture to guess right here in this room there's some victims, and I hope there are no predators, but we know if the cycle isn't broken somewhere, that might be a result. Fortunately, not all the time. The awareness has always been lacking out of denial and defensiveness, and to acknowledge this crime comes in all levels. We're not just talking about rape, we're talking about all unwanted sexual activity that may occur against a person's will. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion or further discussion.
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli,
I'll second it.
second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors, County of Calaveras, this 23rd day of April 2019, does hereby declare April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the County of Calaveras.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we voted. Thank you very much. Dennis, you want to go deliver the, come on up for Robert Kelly? Thank you very much. Guys, we're going to take a 5-minute break, And we're going to come back and start up again. So we'll return here at 10:05. Thank you.
Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Public speaker. District Attorney Yook.
Barbara Uke, District Attorney. My comment is not on, with respect to a matter on the consent or regular agenda. It is with respect to something that happened earlier. I just want to address Al's comment really briefly. My office does absolutely prosecute cases that come to us that we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, meeting all the elements of the crime. In fact, we have a jury trial set for tomorrow, and we go to trial during the year. We also work out cases during the year, and any given year, multiple times. People go to jail, people go to prison, sometimes for very, very long periods of time. It depends on the case, depends on the facts, depends on the victim's wishes, and of course, mostly depends on the law. I do not have statistics. I never have statistics, as some of you may recall. Primarily, that is a resource issue. My case management system does not permit me to run statistics. It would require many, many, many hours in hand searching files, which I just don't have the resources for. The case management system that we looked into a few years ago was $200,000. I don't know how much it costs today, and my choice is to have staff to go to court instead of spending money on a machine. So that is where we are. I do not anticipate requesting that type of funding in my budget proposal this year, maybe next year, because I realize some of the finance issues we're having, especially after the assessor's comments earlier today. But I just wanted to clarify that. I mentioned that to Al earlier during the break, but I wanted to clarify that for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
I think she was lobbying for money.
Public comment. We could take, if you would please stand up, that way I could keep track of who's coming and going. No more than 5 at a time, though, please. And we'll try to move through this. Al, you're kicking off. Let's go.
All right. I hate to jump in front of you guys. Yeah, I did have a very interesting conversation with our district attorney. I wasn't aware that there's so much involved in just reporting the progress of combating these crimes. That means like statistics. How many per year have gone to jail? We don't know that. We assume there's some. And so I don't know that $200,000 would justify having public information or not. I'm not sure. But it seems to me, if the public was aware that there's an increasing prosecution, successful prosecution of these kind of crimes, it might be a detriment to having these crimes. Just a thought. Well, on another note, we're involved with the U.S. Constitution Youth Outreach Project, and yesterday we had the Calaveras Area Business Association sign on to endorse it, and they had a lot of suggestions. They suggested rather than use a senior class, make an offering to the senior class to take the quizzes, that we do the freshmen instead, under the theory that the freshmen might have more of an open mind. I'm not sure how that would work. I'm going to have to get some kids to consult, so I could consult with them to find out what they think, and maybe we'll come up with a really successful program. Also, the board of the Calaveras Area Business Association came up with a suggestion that in our flyer that we actually put information on how people can donate. And so we have a new flyer, and I'll leave copies here. So if anybody's interested in this project, take a flyer, and there's several ways that you can donate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al. Sir?
Morning. My name is Jeremy Carlson, co-owner of the Calaveras Little Trees medical-only cannabis dispensary up in Arnold. We've been waiting nearly 2.5 years for an update to an ordinance that's now almost 14 years old. We've been permitted by the county since early 2014 and taxed by you for the last 2 years. Our local permit does not mesh properly with the state licensing system and the legal system, and the situation created by that is becoming dire for our business. Last night, my partner and I were having one of our now regular but difficult conversations we have these days about our situation while we were counting out our quarterly tax payment to the county, which I brought so you guys can take a look at. Now, her and I, we've taken pay cuts. We're cutting employee hours. We are running up credit lines to keep inventory in stock. We can't hire new people when they leave the company, and so on. It's fairly frustrating counting up tens of thousands of dollars to give to the county every quarter when we feel like our issues are being ignored. This is pure profit for you, and you guys are making more money than the owners of the business make from our own business. We work hard for this money. Our employees work hard for this money. The vendors work hard for this money. The state has worked with us. They've been very responsive, and we feel like everybody's on the same team except for the county. This is our 9th quarter paying taxes, and this is the smallest payment we've ever made by far, because our revenue is going down. It's been going down for 2 years. We believe the entire board should be representing us and treating us as valuable partners and doing what you can to make sure that we're a competitive and successful business, especially considering how much you're profiting off of us. I understand the county has some big fish to fry, but this isn't one of them. This is an update to an ordinance. You have a draft already. It's already gone to the Planning Commission. This is something that needs to get onto the agenda, and it needs to be taken care of. And hopefully, if we're all lucky enough, you guys won't have to talk about us again for another 14 years. So I appreciate your time this morning. I can't stick around because now everybody knows that I have a big bag of cash. So I'm going to run over to the tax collector's office and turn this in, and I'll watch the rest of the meeting online.
Definitely an interesting day. We've got goats and piles of cash.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Tom Calmes. I'm also owner, operator of Green Gold in San Andreas. We are also a medical dispensary. And I would like the Board of Supervisors to please consider updating the medical cannabis ordinance to allow adult use, 21 and up, cannabis sales for the 3 dispensaries that are legally in the county now. Not allowing the adult use has allowed the black market to thrive by not allowing it in this county. The county, like Jeremy was just talking about, has missed mine as well. We do our quarterly taxes every 3 months. Mine's usually $30,000, $40,000. I don't know what his is, but mine's going to be the least amount that it has been since we've been operating since 2013. It's just due to lack of business. So we're losing money. The county's losing money. Just in that alone, on average, we're paying at least $10,000 a month in the county. Granted, it's paid quarterly, but it could potentially be double if we were allowed to do adult use. Most people, just want to use their ID to buy it, like alcohol. No one goes to some random person's house to buy booze at their house. They go to the store. Well, with cannabis, people are forced to go to random houses for black market weed, or drive out to Modesto, Stockton, or Sacramento, where they could buy adult use weed, or use illegal delivery services that some are operating in this county. I think if the board would allow the 3 dispensaries to sell adult use cannabis, I believe it would virtually eliminate the local black market, bring in more money for the county, provide more jobs at the dispensary. I mean, I can't speak on the other two dispensaries have, but I know at mine right here in town, we turn away at least 20 people a day that show up, not to mention all the phone calls as well for adult use. I mean, so there's definitely a want and a need for it, and I would hope that we'd be able to provide that for the people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Tom, you lead off.
Thank you. My name's Tom Infacino. I'm speaking on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition. The county should not eliminate from the general plan update the community plan policies that reduce some of the 25 significant impacts of the general plan. When approving projects that are general in nature, like a general plan update, agencies must develop and approve whatever general mitigation measures are feasible. When a program EIR, like the one done for the general plan update, identifies significant impacts, then certification without adoption of the feasible mitigation measures is an abuse of discretion under CEQA. To reject as infeasible a measure to mitigate a significant impact, a lead agency must have valid findings that the proposed mitigation measure is in fact infeasible. The county must show that there is some economic or environmental or legal or social or technological barrier that makes implementing these measures impossible. With regard to those policies in the existing community plans that have been reducing impacts in these communities for decades, it will be very hard for the county to make a valid finding that somehow, all of a sudden, these policies have become infeasible. Also, it will be difficult for the county to support findings that similar impact-reducing policies in the new and modified community plans are in fact infeasible. As a policy matter, the board has a choice. On the one hand, the board can spend the county's time and money hiring experts to try to prove that these community plan policies that have been mitigating impacts for decades are somehow now infeasible. On the other hand, the board has a better choice. Continue to include in the general plan update those impact mitigating policies in the existing community plans, and add to the general plan update the impact mitigating policies in the proposed community plans. If you want more details on this, please consult the memo I sent you guys last night. Thank you.
Jack?
Good morning, board, staff. Jack Norton with the CPC. I'm going to continue. Another legal problem with the community planning element is that it provides no explanation of how the public interest is served by rescinding so many of the existing community plans and their policies. General plan amendments are required to be in the public interest. That's Government Code Section 65358. And the public interest is defined broadly. One definition is a common concern among citizens in the management and affairs of local, state, and national government. The community planning element explains what has been done to the text of the existing community plans, but it does not explain how this serves the public interest. So my question is, how is it in the public interest to eliminate from the general plan all of the policies from the 1974 Valley Springs Community Plan? The existing 1974 plan provided sound direction regarding commercial, industrial, and residential development, as well as the need for park and infrastructure expansion. What is the public interest in eliminating this direction? And how is it in the public interest to eliminate from the general plan all the policies from all of the Highway 4 corridor community plans? How is it in the public interest to eliminate the policies from these plans that maintain community character, provide for safe and efficient traffic circulation, rationally locate residential, commercial, and industrial development, identify the need and funding for essential public facilities and services, conserve natural resources, protect historical structures, and provide for the health, safety, and quiet enjoyment of local residents? One solution would be to go back and include those community planning elements, in the community planning element, the information and policies in existing community plans that contribute to the public interest. Another solution would be to include those existing Highway 4 corridor plans in the 1974 Valley Springs Community Plan I talked about in a separate volume of the general plan as reference documents. This way, when individual projects are proposed, key local issues could be identified and addressed on a project-by-project basis. Thank you.
Good morning. Colleen Platt with My Valley Springs, and I represent the Calaveras Planning Coalition also. One weakness of the draft general plan's community planning element is that the completed plans for Copperopolis and Valley Springs are not included. This is in sharp contrast to the 2006 direction of the Board of Supervisors to update and adopt the Copperopolis and Valley Springs community plans, along with the District 2 community plans. It is unacceptable and a travesty of justice that the general plan update is proposing to abandon both the existing 1974-75 Valley Springs community plan and all community plan updates submitted to the county in 2010. There is no question that these community plans are needed. The 2016 draft general plan land use map directs large amounts of future development in and around these two communities. Many issues, including the presence of two water utilities, the intersection of two highways, and flooding concerns, complicate future development in Valley Springs. Development in Copperopolis is complicated by Lake Tulloch overcrowding, traffic constraints of the bridge, and the lack of a current basin plan to finance needed road construction. The Planning Department has recognized the need to update the Valley Springs Community Plan since 1983. And it's recognized the need for a Copperopolis community plan since 1992. The county has claimed that these plans could not be implemented and included in the general plan update during this 13-year process, but that they will be completed at some undetermined time in the future. The 3-page Copperopolis plan is complete and has been since 2013. The blended and condensed 4.5-page Valley Springs community plan was completed by planning in January 2017. If brief, needed, and completed plans cannot be adopted now, what good is the county's unenforceable promise to adopt them sometime in the future? The county has also previously argued that the plans were too controversial to adopt. This is no longer the case. The most controversial parts of these plans were the land use maps. These maps have been removed by planning and replaced with the county land use designation map in the land use element of the general plan. There are no longer separate maps for community plans. Please take note that both the supervisors who made the wrong decisions to not include these community plans in June of 2015 are no longer serving on the Board of Supervisors. The current board has the power to right the wrong done to these communities. Please include the 3-page Copperopolis community plan and the 4.5-page Valley Springs community plan in the general plan update. Thank you.
Let's go on. Jazz?
I'm the closer. My name is Joyce Teckel, and I am speaking on behalf of the Calaveras County Planning Coalition. It is time for the Board of Supervisors to rise to the occasion. For 7 years, from 2007 2013, citizens were assured that their community plans would be part of the general plan. People put hundreds of hours of work into coming to broad consensus on their community plans based upon those assurances. Supervisors, planning commissioners, and county staff participated in these processes alongside local residents. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of public funds were spent. These community efforts were needed to build acceptance for the rest of the general plan. The elimination of the community plans from the 2014 draft general plan betrayed the efforts of those people and has weakened support for the general plan update. The 2015 Board of Supervisors direction to return only some of those community plans to their rightful place in the general plan update did not completely cure that betrayal, nor did the 2016 draft general plan that only includes some of the policies of some of the return community plans. Please do not ratify the mistakes of the supervisors you were elected to replace. The task falls to you to correct these mistakes of past supervisors, their planning directors, and their consultants. This is your time to rise to the occasion. Give local residents and their communities the consideration they deserve. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Good morning. My name is Laree Garza. I live in Railroad Flat off Independence Road, which is damaged by the storms on February 14th. Public Works failed to clear the culverts, causing damage that could have been avoided. Even after the storm, the county came out, they put up pylons, they left the culverts clogged, the water's running across the road, continuing the erosion. So the good people who live on Independence, Liberty Hill, Dogwood Pass, we went out there with our shovels and our picks and we cleaned the culverts, put the water right back where it was supposed to be, stopped the erosion. The county gets mad, they come out and they put up K-rails. They block off access to Dogwood Pass. They're now using Liberty Hill Road, which is the road I live on. It's a goat trail. It was also damaged by the storm severely. It goes all the way up, all the way around down to Dogwood Pass where it's blocked. Dogwood Pass was torn up by the storm. The road is undermined. People that live on the bottom, they're scared to death to drive on it now, and it takes a four-wheel drive truck. Safety vehicles can't get up there. Should there be a fire coming from the east, we're screwed. We can't get out. Two vehicles can't pass going up and down the road. It's terrible. What I do know is so far the county's got two quotes. One's from Ford Construction, one's from CTC General Engineering. Both of these outside companies have stated the road is not undermined, and it would take less than a week to fix it completely, open the road up. But the county says, well, we don't have any money. We don't have any money to fix the road. It's going to stay closed unless we can get FEMA money. That's not acceptable. People are going to die. Safety vehicles can't even get up. There's over 40 houses up there where people are blocked. One access, and it's to the east. After the Butte fire, this is causing a lot of distress. So if the county can't afford to pay these outside contractors, why can't the road department fix the road? Isn't that what they do? Or if you get a copy of the report from either of these two contractors, you'll find it's safe to open up one lane. Let the people through. Let the people use their road. Let us have peace of mind so we don't go to bed worrying. Are we going to die? Are we going to burn to death? What if somebody has a heart attack? Safety vehicles cannot get up there. And somebody's going to die falling off the road. That's falling down. 40 people cannot go on a goat trail.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How many more speakers do we have? You can raise your hand. All right. George, you're up.
Good morning, Board. I was asked to read this little bulletin from Questions, Persuade, and Refer, QPR. Want to know more about suicide prevention? QPR is designed to help all of us identify and refer suicidal persons to professions who can assess, manage, and treat the underlying illnesses that promote suicidal behavior. Learn the objectives, a 1-hour training with Ken Baldwin, who's a teacher at Bret Harte High School. Here Ken shares his lived experience, how to discuss suicidal intent with a person in crisis, recognizing the warning signs in someone in distress, how and where to refer a person in distress, suicide rates in Amador County, resources in Amador County. So if you have any questions about this and you'd like to go to the training, it's you can contact Sherry Kimbrough or Charlene Ulmer at 223-444. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Bonnie?
Good morning. I'm here today to talk about roads, a road in particular, Double Springs Road. I have some bad news to share. Over the holidays, 2 of my buddies were killed on Double Springs Road. When I leave my house to drive to this place, I pull out of the driveway and it's a double yellow line and there's not supposed to be cars passing the other cars, but as I was heading down the road, a whole flock of my little buddies come across the road. About 30 or 40 free-range turkeys that cross the road every day. They come and peck at the fence for the crackers I throw, and then they cross the road and go down to the creek and play. And as I'm slowing down, I thought it was a woman. It could have been a guy with long hair in a big, long car. Didn't even hear him, comes swooping around me, goes on the right side of the road and hits 2 of the turkeys. And all I saw was feathers all over the place. Never found the carcasses. All I can hope is they're wedged in that person's grill and they have to get out there and pull it out themselves, but it was kind of horrifying. Now my cat loves to watch the turkeys. Sits at the fence, twice as big as he is, but he's fascinated by them. They're not my pets, but I throw stuff over the fence so they can watch them. A little regard for the wildlife, little regard for the human life, people using Double Springs Road as a bypass to the highway. Once it was repaved so that PG&E could get their big trucks up to that electrical power exchange up there. It's been hell on Double Springs. They're going 50, 60, and faster miles an hour. All our mailboxes are on the other side of the road. We have to cross the road to get our mail. People are not respectful. We get flipped off. We get honked at if we have to be in the road. And next door to me is a man in a power chair who crosses the road every day to put his mail in and take his mail out. I just hope that there can be something, and I'm going to look at my supervisor, and I had asked him before to see if anything could be done. Thank you.
Neil, you'll be our last speaker.
Good morning, Neil McEwen, Calaveras resident, speaking on my own behalf. Don't mean to reiterate this, but I feel it's necessary. There are 54 farms that paid $1.3 million in taxes annually that will be precluded from operating under the permanent ordinance as it's being written. 41 of those are in D2, Jack. It doesn't matter. No state mechanism exists to allow farms to obtain a license for an APN they won't be working on. These farms will be forced to go to the back of the line of 6,000 applications. It's necessary to consider the impacts of your choices. when I was studying planning in '96, GIS was used for planning purposes. I don't understand why there wasn't even ever a map put up there. You didn't consider where the choices you were making were impacting people. And I think it's a big mistake. It's necessary to point out the dichotomies of your choices because, for instance, choosing to go with a CUP process to reprocess farms which currently costs 2.5 times more than an AUP, will theoretically be increasing staff's workload by 2.5 times. An AUP for farms that were already approved seems to be the most reasonable, cost-effective alternative, and I would ask that you reconsider that, please. And the planning director has said that this board directed him not to bring forward all the rezoning required on the general plan update. And now you'll make us rezone before the new rezoning is in place. This too does not seem like equal and fair treatment. Ben, you stated that RR means no rhyme or reason, and then you voted against it. That doesn't really make sense. And lastly, Dennis, your narrative of us being speculators is more than offensive. I resent it. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars rebuilding my property after being burnt out in the fire, and you call me a speculator? It's really too much to bear. And you can sit there and smile about it if it makes you feel better. But I think you need to consider what the implications of this ordinance are a little bit further in the meantime while it's not before you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for the day. Before we move on, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Sorry, we've got a technical challenge, so we're going to take a 10-minute break, so we will come back here at 10:50. Hello and welcome back. For those of you in the audience, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the internet later on, but you will not be streaming live. So, with no further ado, let's move on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Any board members want to remove an item? Supervisor Stopper.
Item 10, please.
Other items? Seeing none. Any staff want to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Any public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
13.
Al Segala, 13. Others?
Also
10. Okay, Bonnie, you're on 10 too. Supervisor Mills?
No.
Very well. Seeing nothing else removed, is there a motion for the remainder of the items?
I'll move the remainder.
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Mills, second by Supervisor Toffenelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item 10.
Item 10 is from Human Services to authorize the board chair to execute an agreement with Five Claw Maintenance for janitorial services in the Human Services building located at 509 East St. Charles Street, San Andreas, in an amount not to exceed $57,607 for the period of April 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2019.
Supervisor Stopper, you had a question?
Just a simple one as to why we are contracting out. We have employees for janitorial services within the county. I do realize this does not have an impact to our general fund, that it's primarily reimbursed through federal and state funds to Health and Human Services, but I would like to, for transparency purposes, for her to explain reasoning, and we'll go from there.
Come on up and tell us why we're not using county employees.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Kyrie Biker. I'm an analyst with HHSA. Historically, HHSA has contracted out these services, and we do have an ultimate goal of one day using county employees. However, we defer to the CAO's office and HR as to when that may materialize. In the interim, we need to continue cleaning our building, so we are continuing a contract. We've contracted with this agency since 2016 when we released an RFQ and they were the qualified candidate.
Is there any, why has SEIU been consulted on this?
SEIU has been conferred with, and they have approved this contract, yes.
So do we intend to have that changed at the end of the year? We're going to the end of this year. Do we expect that we're going to continue this, or are we going to hire people?
That's the piece that I defer to the CAO's office and HR. The recruitment piece I can't specifically speak to, but I believe that is the ultimate goal, is by the end of this contract term.
Stop, you have other questions?
That addresses it. So this contract's for 1 year term?
It's actually for a 9-month period.
9-month period?
Correct,
At
yes.
which point then if, we can look at possibly moving the services back within the county.
That would be the ultimate goal, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, you had a question?
Very much the same. Since the contract began on April 1st, is Five Claw Maintenance already performing this service? And how come it's a partial contract? Because they stopped, or are we changing people? I mean, I don't understand that. And where is Five Claw Maintenance located? Is it a local janitorial service? And I'm anticipating, if we're looking at almost $60,000 for an 8-month contract, we're talking about, $15,000 a month? Or how much a month? I can't figure. No, not 15. A little less than 10 then. But have there been a cost comparison with having county employees as compared to the outside janitorial service? And the lady mentioned in 2015 they've been contracting with these folks. Is that when county employees stopped doing the janitorial? Because, okay, then all those questions, if they could be answered.
We'll try to get some of them. I'd also like to suggest that maybe you talk to Carrie offline and she could walk you through all the specific steps. Do you want to have a quick rebuttal and then we'll move this thing forward?
So I'll do my best to answer all of those questions. Five Claw is a local company. We have historically contracted for cleaning of our building since the inception of this contract almost 20 years ago when we occupied the building. So no, we did not kick out county employees, if you will. I'm not going to attempt to do the math on the monthly cost because that's not my strong suit. And if there were any other questions, I'll definitely meet with Bonnie after this to discuss further.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments on this item? George?
Well, where's the elephant in the room? The reason why I asked that question is because we had somebody that was going to contract with the county, and according to what information was provided today, that's not going to happen. And I'm curious as to why it's not happening, whether they chose not to apply or what have you. This was a big controversy during the sheriff's campaign, so I'm really curious to talk about the elephant in the room.
Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or a motion.
I'll move that.
Moved by Supervisor Mills. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Toffenelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. George, that was a jail issue. Different issues. I'll catch you a break. All right, Madam Clerk.
Item 13 is from Public Works to receive a report associated with the emergency work for the removal of dead and dying trees on Bureau of Land Management land in Calaveras County.
Al, you had a question?
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. It didn't seem right to us that BLM would not be responsible for the trees on their property, and we encourage you to write to the President of the United States and let it trickle on down to try to correct the situation. You didn't heed our advice, and so we thought we would write to the President and let it trickle back down. But before doing so, sometimes it's good to think twice and write once. We contacted our Congressman, McClintock, and he suggested that we would probably get better results if we wrote to the Department of Interior, which we did, and we went through his office, and unfortunately, I can't report any results. It didn't respond. So we would like for you to consider making a very polite request for BLM to pay the costs of fixing the trees on their property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al. Are there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for the board for discussion or a motion.
I'll move this item.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
I'm sorry, could you say the motion and second again?
I was moved by Supervisor Toffenelli, second by Supervisor Stopper. That's okay. I'm moving quick, sorry.
Item 18 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt an ordinance amending the zoning of a portion of APN 024-001-033 from timber production and APN 024-001-034 from rural residential, 1.3 acre minimum parcel size, to residential agriculture for Victoria Teller, application number 2017-144, and to authorize a publication of a summary notice and brief property description.
Thank you. I am opening a public hearing. Gina, please.
Good morning. So just as briefly explained, you have before you today a zoning amendment. A landowner and applicant Victoria Teller applied to the county surveyor's office some time ago for a lot line adjustment to adjust the boundary of her two parcels for the purpose of alleviating a trespass of residential development from one parcel to the other. Assessor parcel number 24-001-033 is a 7.33 acre parcel which happens to be zoned TP or timber production. The adjacent parcel is parcel number 24-001-034, which is a smaller 1.45 acre parcel zoned rural residential. The merger of a portion of the larger 7.33 TP zoned parcel into the 1.45 zoned acre parcel zoned rural residential creates a split zoning for purposes of consistency and for assessment purposes. We have suggested that she rezone the parcel to a more consistent zone district instead of allowing the split zoning of the newly created parcel. In case you aren't aware, the TPZ is to implement the provisions of the Zeeburg, Warren, and Collier Forest Taxation Reformation Act. The assessor's office then assesses value of those properties for growing and harvesting timber as the highest and best use of the land. For that purpose, the merger of a portion of a TP zoned parcel with a rural residential parcel, for obvious reasons, the land is not used for timber production. It is actually residential. The portion of that parcel that's zoned TP needs to be rezoned.
The compatible zone in the two land use designations and compatible with the general plan, as well as the general plan update, is residential agriculture. This item was heard before your Planning Commission on March 28th, and they voted 5-0, recommending that you adopt the ordinance. And obviously, our recommendation is to rezone that portion of land from TP and the current zoning of RR 1.3 to RA, leaving the remainder of the larger parcel timber production.
This is a public hearing. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, are there any questions, any comments from the audience? Public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion, a motion, or for Supervisor Stopper.
I'll move this as planning's recommendation and the Plan Commission's recommendation as is.
Thank you. We have a motion by Supervisor Stopper. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Callaway. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Item 19 is from Planning to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution establishing revised fees for the Planning Department.
Thank you. I will open a public hearing regarding this item.
Good morning, Peter Maurer, Planning Director. This is a comprehensive update to the Planning Department fees. It actually started off as sort of a targeted approach to looking at a handful of different fees, and then through the direction of the prior CAO, as well as just the general need to update our fees, it's become more of a comprehensive project. It actually took well over a year to work its way through the process to ensure that we have analyzed the costs appropriately, reviewed with the auditor and county council. I think just all the information is in your packet. I don't need to go over a lot of detail. A couple of things I want to do. In some cases, we're actually reducing fees. We've created some streamlined fee processes, particularly for categorically exempt projects under CEQA, so that rather than someone doing a fairly simple project but does need to go to the commission for a hearing, we're not charging for preparation of an environmental document that's unnecessary if it is exempt. So hopefully that will encourage people to apply for a permit for a use that would require a use permit and not feel constrained by the cost of the application. I think it's a fairly conservative fee. We're only charging about $72 an hour for our department costs. That's the average based on the salaries, overhead costs, and other costs associated with running the department. With that, I'll just ask if there are any questions that you have.
Questions on the board? Supervisor Toffanelli?
I do. On your appeal of the Planning Department Planning Commission, I know a couple years ago it was bumped up to $500.
Yes.
And it's staying at $500 here.
Yes.
I would like to see that lowered. I don't know where the fee came from, if you had any backup to show for that amount or what, but it's been a consistent complaint from my constituents of that amount being bumped up to $500 for a simple appeal to the board from a decision made with Planning Commission. So I don't know how the rest of the board members feel about it, or if they've had or experienced complaints about it as much as I have. But I would like to see it lowered myself.
Peter, you want to respond?
That fee was, I really hate to use the term arbitrary, but it really wasn't based on the full cost. The appeal fee, actually, if we're recovering the full cost, would be much higher than that. But the balancing act that the board took was that, well, we need to recover some money, but we can't make it so expensive that it precludes the ability of a citizen to make an appeal. I think the prior fee was, if I recall, $175 or something like that, or 100, and then was raised a couple years ago the last time that we had some targeted fee updates presented to the board. It's purely a policy decision by the board. It can be reduced if you like. We do not recover our costs on appeals.
Do you want to keep the conversation, or would you like to pull the board on that end?
I'd like to pull the board on whether they want to keep that fee or look at a lower rate.
Very well. Any comments on that before we do a poll? Supervisor, sorry, Ben was in waiting.
I do understand it after being on the Plan Commission and seeing all the work that you've done over time on so many appeals. And at the time it was put through, there were appeals on denials and a multitude of other projects that really are labor intensive. So at the same time, we aren't seeing, even with the $500, we aren't seeing a full recovery, correct?
That's correct.
And I just, even, I don't want it to be a full recovery because I don't want to deter anyone their rights being able to appeal, but I am receptive to the $500 amount at this time, precluding any comments.
Supervisor Callaway? I'm sorry. Did you want to go, Marita?
Just on this, Mr. Mauer, what does it cost for the planning department to have an appeal come to the board, and what does that encompass and why?
Well, it's going to depend a lot on the nature of the appeal, the nature of the project. We had a lot of appeals on the cannabis registration program under the urgency ordinance, and I would say those 20 to 30 hours of our time preparing for that information, including the hearings. We had appeals for, some of you may recall, the asphalt plant that took a considerable amount of time. In other cases, it's probably not as much. I would say on average it would probably range in $1,000 to $1,500 at a minimum. I didn't do any real analysis of how much time. Again, because the board had previously established it at $500, I felt that was appropriate. But again, it's a matter of, does that amount stymie the ability of a citizen to file an appeal when they're affected by a department? It doesn't typically affect an applicant who is already going through a process, particularly a larger project that may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in building costs, the $500 fee to appeal a decision of the commission to the board or my decision to the planning commission. Is really sort of a drop in the bucket, but certainly for a citizen who may feel they are adversely affected upon approval of a project next to them, it can be a considerable cost.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, I remember being in the room when that was going on, as you recall, and there was a lot of angst over it, and you did at that time develop some type of a cost analysis because the previous board had heard what you said, and that's, I think, why they settled in on that $500 number. Substantially higher. I don't know what other counties around us are charging for that same work, but I do recall a statement of whatever we're doing has to be defensible, and that your work has to ensure that if it lands in court on an appeal of the Board of Supervisors, that you can defend your decision. Right. So that's where a lot of this cost comes from. I'd be curious to know what the true cost analysis looks like. And as you recall, during the appeal process for cannabis, there was a lot of people who were gaming the system, as you recall, and we were spending a lot of additional staff time just bouncing from one appeal and then a subsequent, well, let's not do it today, let's do it tomorrow kind of thing. So until we can really see what those true costs are, I'm not going to give public's funds and public time towards their benefit here unless I can truly see what that analysis is.
Supervisor Stopper?
your staff's time in a lot of these bills is not the only time that's incurred. A lot of times, I've witnessed that county council does need to have a part in it, and in representation, and that incurs more cost than your initial analysis of, let's say, $1,500.
These fees are only applied to the planning department. There are other fees that we collect for other departments, but as Megan is painfully aware, she does not get any of that money. She's funded through 87 costs and other resources. So we do, the county council's office does not recover the costs. There are, code enforcement, building department, public works, environmental management are often involved in the appeal processes. And they also do not receive any compensation for that. They do receive, we collect fees on behalf of Public Works and Environmental Management when a project like a use permit or a tentative map is submitted.
Thank you. Question for us, Supervisor Toffenelli, after the discussion, would you like to continue with the poll?
Well, I just want to point out that we went to a hearing officer instead of going through the planning commission. And so, for the cannabis.
For the code enforcement activity associated with cannabis, these appeals would be anything that would be my decision based on an interpretation of the code, for example. There is an appeal that is currently going through the process that will be coming to the board in the future over determination on whether a use is a legal non-conforming or strictly an illegal use on a piece of property. We've had, appeals of use permit applications and those kinds of things. So that would not be heard by the appeals officer. That would be heard by the commission or the board.
Correct. I understand that.
Yeah.
But we did, for the cannabis section, went to.
Right.
And I think it's being built into this ordinance that we're writing coming forward, going to come back to us.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out because a lot of that had to do with cannabis and this initiation of this fund raise. I would be interested, since it doesn't seem like we have a consensus on this, at least bringing this part back, like Supervisor Mills talked about, with an actual cost estimate or analysis of what's going on, and have a further discussion at that time. Perhaps at that time, we can maybe make a tiered type cost.
Sure.
But it's certainly for discussion.
All right, do you want to have further discussion, or do you guys want to, Supervisor Stopper?
I can support further discussion on this, most definitely.
All right, so further discussion, Supervisor Mills?
And that is my point too, is we bring it back as a separate agenda item, just like we did when we originally created that $500 number. And let's have a broader discussion about that only, not try to embed it in here and slip it in.
Just so I'm clear, so we will leave it as is and bring it back for further discussion. And there seems to be consensus on that. Other items that you guys would like to pull out on this and talk about?
Yes,
Supervisor Callaway?
Williamson Act, I didn't see it on here, but it was in your staff report. So I understand you do the work, and so are we going to?
This was something that I proposed 3 years ago now, and there was not an appetite to apply a fee, and so I did not pursue it at this point in time.
So
I still am concerned the fact that we do the bulk of the work and the fee goes to the ag department.
And the whole purpose is they get a tax break.
Right.
So we get reduced revenue. We're spending revenue for them to get reduced revenue. And we're accepting Williamson Act, though the state doesn't reimburse us anymore. Is that still correct?
Those are all correct statements, yes.
So is this something we want the general fund to eat? And the same, everything that we say no to, the general fund's going to pay. And I think for the Williamson Act, we should at least maybe give it some consideration, because there is quite a bit of staff time that goes into it. And I think this county has been real clear that we support Williamson Act, and we are still accepting Williamson Act contracts when many other counties no longer do that. So that's a benefit to those people who want them. So should they be paying something to get a Williamson Act benefit?
If I may,
And
I
that's
don't want to
just one
argue,
of
we
the
could
things.
argue Williamson Act, that might be one of the things we need to bring back, because Williamson Act is a county policy based upon planning decisions that we are going to value open spaces and set in place certain barriers from rapid development. And so while the Williamson Act contract does get a benefit, the county in turn gets a benefit also, if that's one of our planning priorities. So if you want to take it back, and we could take on the Williamson Act as a broader conversation.
I don't think when we established that we want to continue to accept Williamson Act contracts, we were looking at it from the Williamson Act property owner's point of view, not, oh, that gives us open space, because it's only open space as long as that Williamson Act is in effect. And we've had people get out of the Williamson Act so they could subdivide their property in 10 years.
Sure, the Williamson Act is very clear about that process.
I'm just throwing it out because that's something that we're going to then, we have been, and we really don't have that many, I don't think. But it is something that planning's brought up, and chalk it on the list as we cut things for planning to charge the public. We're increasing the amount of general fund revenue. I'm just telling the board, somebody pays. Either all the taxpayers of Calaveras pay, or the customer.
I
It'd be a
think,
fun discussion to have.
I think Marita has a very good point, and if we're going to look into something like this, maybe we could have that brought back at the same time as the appeal fee for that broader discussion.
If I could suggest that might be a separate discussion. I think that we're actually looking at the need to maybe update the ordinance and the procedure more comprehensively, and we can certainly bring back a discussion about fees at that time as well. But I would suggest that we separate those two items.
I'm going to tell you that I think we ought to really, if we're going to take on Williamson Act, we better set aside the whole day.
That might be a good study session item.
No,
I just want to tail end on Marita's comments. Marita, if you remember, the year was probably about 2009, and the state quit paying their portion of that, but we agreed because of the recession to continue Williamson Acts. And at the time, our discussion was, well, after the recession, will the state go back into paying again, which they haven't, but that's the reason we continued. And we've gone forward with it because I don't think it's ever been brought back since then. So, but I think we need to have that conversation. I'm in agreement to bring it back and at least maybe for an application, discuss whether we can collect some of the fees on it. Not remanding it, but going forward, what it costs.
You're right. I mean, I think we want to keep it. That's, I mean, if we're going to say we're an ag county, how can we not have the Williamson Act? It's just,
And that was our discussion.
yeah, who wants to pay? So bring it on, Jack.
As long as we're not talking about eliminating the Williamson
No,
Act, we can
I don't
certainly talk, because that's what I heard you say,
No.
Marita, and I didn't think you wanted to bite that.
That's not what I was saying. What I am saying, to be clear, is that, as Mr. Mauer had it in his staff report as a discussion, we've never charged for the Williamson Act, and so the applicants get a tax benefit. I mean, they understand that, everybody understands that. So the taxpayers of Calaveras are paying for other people to get a tax benefit. And so,
Well, I
I'm
think
not- I'm
that'd be a
just-
really good, I think we could talk about the fees.
okay, but I don't think, I don't want to eliminate the Williamson Act. And I don't
wanna say
think
that a
there's
couple times?
support.
I don't think probably any of us do, but are we going to take a poll to bring this back?
We'll take a poll to
When?
take this back, to bring back Williamson Act fees we could probably do it at the same time that we do the other update.
No.
I was suggesting we do it
Mr. Mauer
separately.
asked to wait.
I think that
Okay,
that
then
it's a
let's-
broader discussion,
So-
as you've all agreed.
Because I don't know, we're not getting that many applications like we used to, are we?
We are.
We are?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it's all the more reason. So whenever you bring it back, the ordinance, then we can discuss it at that time. Okay, I want to move on to another item.
Do you want us to poll to see who wants to talk about Williamson Act fees? Supervisor Toffenelli?
Yes.
Supervisor Stalbert?
Yes.
And Supervisor Callaway?
Yeah.
Okay, bring it back.
When he brings back the whole thing on the Williamson Act.
When he brings back the Williamson Act fees piece.
No, Mr. Mauer is asking that it be part of the total Williamson Act discussion ordinance.
I will work with the Ag Department and probably the ag industry to sort of have a broader discussion of the Williamson Act. I think there are some procedural issues that we need to look at regarding how we handle the applications. There's been some changes in state
So-
law that I think it would be I would recommend that it be a broader discussion. Doesn't sound like, there's any real, desire to eliminate the program at the county, but at least how we handle it internally, so.
Okay, we could put it on a study session agenda item for, we'll talk to the CAO, can figure out when the next opportunity and when it works. You've got a lot on your plate right now.
Yeah, it won't be immediately.
You got a few items. Does that sound correct?
I want to make sure you understand.
You
What
gotta
is
keep
it
saying
you-
you're not into eliminating the
I don't
Williamson Act.
think any of us are into eliminating the Williamson Act,
I understand.
Mr. Garamendi. Okay, let me move on to another item. Okay, glad I brought that up. The development agreement, I understand time and materials. I'm curious on what are the conditions for determining time and material? Is it something like a Castle and Cook project or, a Saddle Creek versus a development agreement for a cannabis farm?
Well,
I
each
mean-
one is unique.
Right.
And so typically a development agreement is associated with a larger project such as a specific plan or, Castle and Cook project, something like that. There's no way for me to judge how many hours something like that would take at this point in time. It just seemed appropriate, the time materials fee. And so if it's going to be a fairly simple one, it probably wouldn't cost that much. Typically what we would do would be to have a deposit, a couple $1,000s deposit. We work on that. As we start, billing against that, we say, okay, we need to, re-up that. And if it's a longer process, this would be the same way we would do like an environmental impact report or something else where the applicant is paying for the project. They submit a deposit and we bill off of that, and then they sort of reimburse that fund throughout the process. So it's going to depend on the complexity and the length of time it takes to do that.
The TUD, the temporary use permits,
Mhm.
this is the one for an event that is not like a reoccurring event like Lumberjack Days or the car show at White Pines or the Valley Springs Parade. This is for a community event that's not a reoccurring one?
So
or
we
a
have
new
several
one?
different types of temporary use permits. There's the historical ones, which are a no-fee use permit that's built into the ordinance that was adopted several years ago. That basically, if you've been doing these events for a number of years, just apply for a one-time use permit, and there's no fee associated with that, just so we sort of have it on record. This is what it is. This is the extent of it. The next one would be the $100 fee, which is the one-time event. Someone wants us to do, a special one-time fundraiser event, whatever it might be. And then the $300 fee would be that sort of larger, sort of ongoing event, or something that sort of goes beyond just the confines of the property itself. So the ordinance lays out the different types of temporary use permits. And so the one-day event is intended to be, a nominal fee of $100. And it probably comes close to covering our costs unless there's some unique situation with that.
And the conditional use permit, CEQA exempt,
Mhm.
assuming, making an assumption that we do for, in the cannabis ordinance, requirements of a CUP, would those be CEQA exempt? Because there was an overall EIR. I'm not clear. I mean, it could apply to...
I would not foresee, unless there's a specific exemption that's provided for in the CEQA guidelines. An example would be a change in use in a commercial business, that the use itself requires a use permit in the zone where the prior use did not. And so there's no change to the building, there's no change to parking, there's no physical changes to the environment. That use permit would get the lower fee because we're not having to do the work to prepare an environmental document. With the future cannabis ordinance, I do not foresee that those would fit under any kind of categorical exemption. We may be able to tier off the EIR for analysis, but we would still be required to file some sort of environmental document for use permits relating to a cannabis permit.
I think I'm going to have to talk to you about that offline. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm just not sure I agree with the whole concept. I mean, not that I'm not supporting it. It's a new fee. I understand that. That's it.
Supervisor Mills? Okay, so, Mr. Mauer, it seems like we have some consensus that we'll have further conversations about the $500 appeal fee. At some point, we'll bring back a broader discussion about the Williamson Act now. We charge on those things. And is there any public comment? Sorry, Supervisor Toffenali.
Yeah, I have one other item.
Yes, sir.
And county council may chime in on this. On your staff report, you're asking for us to allow you to waive fees when someone comes for a nonprofit organization.
Not nonprofit, just another public entity.
Another public entity.
So like fire departments or a water district or something like that. We have typically had to bring those through a procedure, and they're routinely waived. It just seems like an extra expense and time delay on those. A fire station for the local fire district comes to mind. We discussed the possibility of nonprofits, but there's such a broad range of uses. It just seems like those ought to be looked at on a case-by-case basis rather than me having the authority to waive that fee. Or basically you granting me the authority to waive that fee.
And I don't have a problem with that. Okay. But my question would be to county council, in the resolution, the only part of the resolution that addresses it says, whereas there is a public benefit in providing the ability to waive fees for local agency providing services to the county residents. Does that cover what he's asking? It doesn't specifically give him, does it give him specifically that authority if we pass this resolution?
I would recommend that we add an additional, be it further resolved, that the planning director has the ability, or the board delegates the authority to the planning director to waive fees for local agencies providing services to county residents.
Okay. All right.
There is a statement at the end of the attachment A that has that, but I'm fine with that language. There was one other correction. This was originally scheduled to be heard on the 9th, but we had to postpone it because the advertising was, needed to be redone. And in the resolution at the, be it further resolved, it says it will take effect on June 10th. It's actually June 22nd.
And I just want to make sure the language was clear enough that so.
Is it, just for clarification, Madam Council, is it clear enough, or do we need, with the part that Mr. Mauer was referring to, or do we need to amend this item with this sentence?
It's not in the resolution.
We can, I mean, this is all part of the record. If the motion is to adopt the resolution as amended, staff can modify the resolution
To match this conversation.
to match the conversation, correct?
Motion here, and clear, that's my question. So,
It makes sense.
And it does already say that it is therefore resolved that the board adopts the fee schedule for the planning department as shown in the attachment A. In attachment A, there is a provision that does reference the waiver in an abundance of caution, just having the clarification of delegating the authority in the resolution. We can certainly add that.
Well, I would think that we need to do that because of some of the issues that we've come up with.
Okay.
What's gone on in the past wasn't clear, so that's why I brought it up.
Okay, before I close this hearing, is there any public comment on this item? Bonnie?
Just a couple of questions. I may have missed something. The increase is now to $72 an hour from what base? What was it before? And regarding number of appeals, how many appeals are filed in the county and how many are successful? I mean, I don't need to know number, like most of them, most appeals successful or less than half? And am I to understand that right now there is no application fee for the Williamson Act?
Any other public comments? Thank you. Before I close the public hearing, would you like to make a first statement, Mr. Mauer?
It's a little unclear what the prior fee was based on. When we processed refunds, we would look at the actual weighted hourly rate of the staff individual that worked on that project. This provides an average, so it doesn't really matter who you're assigned to. If you happen to be assigned to a planner 1 as opposed to a planner 3, you're not getting charged a higher rate. This is an average of all the expenses of the department, including overhead costs. I don't have the information on the appeals, but that can be certainly something we discuss when we bring that back. And the third question was, there is a fee that is paid to the Ag Department at $605, I believe, that goes to the Ag Department to process the Williamson Act, but no fee to the Planning Department.
Thank you very much. No further public comment. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll move it as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Stopper, second by Supervisor Toffenelli. I think we are clear about what the amendment language is. Therefore, Supervisor Mills, did you want to say something? For I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now recessed as the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors, and we are reconvening as the Air Pollution Control District.
So item 20 is from the Air Pollution Control District to delegate authority to the Air Pollution Control Officer to approve a grant agreement with the California Air Resources Control Board for revenue not to exceed $50,000 to fund work associated with smoke management plans.
Mr. Banner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. The state requires that smoke management plans get submitted to air districts whenever there is a prescribed burn of greater than 10 acres or more than a ton of particulate matter will be produced. And with the state's enhanced, fuel reduction program, we're going to see a lot more of these burns, and we support them and we're partners with CAL FIRE on this, but we don't have a fee for it. And this funding from the state would help defray the costs of the program, of the work that we do. So that's why we're making this request.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the Air Pollution Control District Board?
Yes,
Mr.
I
Toffenelli.
have a question. Brad, is that your official Air Pollution Control District tie that you have on there? Is that,
No.
Okay. Very nice tie.
Thank you. Before I close this public hearing, this meeting, is there any public comments on this item? Very well. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. Is there any further discussion or a motion?
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes 5-0. We'll adjourn as the Air Pollution Control District and reconvene as the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors.
Can we take a 5-minute break to allow the next presentation to set up?
About 3. Okay. We'll take a slight break while the next presentation sets up. So don't go far. I'm moving, Dennis. I'm trying.
Item 21 is from the Administrative Office to receive a presentation on the East San Joaquin Groundwater Sustainability Plan update.
Good morning. Just as stated, this is an update on the East San Joaquin Groundwater Sustainability Plan update. CCWD, I thought was going to be part of this today. That's why you see County Administration and CCWD, and they may come in during the presentation. Thank you. So, with that said, I'm going to do just a little bit of a brief history for the board on groundwater background for the county. The county's been very active in groundwater management and regulations for many years now, actually starting in 2000. So, just briefly, several actions taken by the Board of Supervisors throughout the years. Started in 1998 with the adoption of the Well Construction and Destruction Standards. That's your current well regulating ordinance. 1999, the board adopted a couple of ordinances adopting proof of groundwater standards for land development. Some of you were here when that happened, and that had to do with making sure that there was adequate groundwater available for subdivisions. 2000, the board adopted a resolution establishing the local agency groundwater protection program. Some of the data that you're going to see in this presentation today is a result of that program. Moving on to 2002, the board adopted standards regulating the extraction and transfer of groundwater management, which is a groundwater management ordinance, which was actually something that many rural counties did, and was kind of an item that was led by RCRC. That particular ordinance has to do, and it resides in the planning department. It has to do with actual extraction of groundwater, if it ever was to be extracted out of the ground in Calaveras County and transported across the county line. That would require a permit as issued by the Board of Supervisors. That has not been done today. 2005, several ordinances, 3 of them specifically, further defining proof of groundwater requirements pertaining to land development. Again, subdivisions, tentative parcel maps, tentative subdivision map act issues. 2008, the board adopted an ordinance which updated the well construction destruction standards, which was originally introduced in 1998 and adopted by the board. That was our first bullet. And in 2013, the board adopted amendments to the proof of groundwater for accessory dwellings and the like. So moving on to what is called SGMA, or the State Groundwater Management Act, the GSA's, Groundwater Sustainability Agencies, and GSP's Groundwater Sustainability Plans. The background on this started in 2014. Governor Brown signed into law, and you'll see here in 2015 and another slide, really 3 bills that talked about what do we do about the subsidence in the Central Valley due to overpumping, especially in the southern part of the state. where we've had tremendous drop in elevation due to the evacuation of the groundwater tables, groundwater basins. So that became what they call the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So the act was designed really a framework for improved groundwater management by local agencies, and it was actually designed to actually bring jurisdictions into what they call groundwater sustainability. So essentially SGMA, State Groundwater Management Act, provides local agencies with the tools to manage those groundwater basins in a sustainable manner and over the long term. More specifically, it established, obviously, the definition of sustainable groundwater management, established local agencies to develop plans and implement strategies to sustainably manage groundwater resources. That includes Calaveras County as part of the GSA, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. Prioritize basins with the greatest problems, ranked as high and medium priority. The groundwater basin that actually intercepts the west part of Calaveras County is considered a high priority. We'll discuss that in a few minutes as well. And the bottom line, set a 20-year timeline for implementation. So just as you would imagine, sustainable groundwater management means management and use of groundwater in a manner that can be maintained during the planning and implementation horizon without causing undesirable results. The horizon they're speaking of is really a 20-year horizon, where we must, all the state groundwater basins must reach sustainability, meaning water in, water out, and essentially not a negative flow of groundwater. Background on SGMA and how that took place and where we are today. January 1st of 2015, the legislation went into effect from those three bills that we just discussed. In June 30th of 2017, local groundwater sustainability agencies, GSAs, were to be formed. That has happened. We are part of the East Side Groundwater Sustainability Agency. That includes the Rock Creek Water District, Stanislaus County, CCWD, and Calaveras County. By 2020, groundwater sustainability plans must be completed for basins in critical condition of overdraft. Again, that's us. Not only is it the East Side Groundwater Basin that's in overdraft, it's the entire San Joaquin Groundwater Basin that's in overdraft pursuant to Bulletin 118 of Department of Water Resources. So what you have, and we'll discuss this a little bit in further detail, you have 15 GSAs. We are just one of those GSAs. All those GSAs come together and actually put together what they call the Groundwater Sustainability Plan that has to be issued to the State Department of Water Resources by 2020. By 2022, GSPs must be completed in all other high and medium priority basins not currently in overdraft. Unfortunately, we're in overdraft. And then again, as stated before, 20 years after adoption, 2040 for us, all high priority groundwater basins must achieve sustainability. So really, SGMA promotes a coordinated management of the entire groundwater basin, which again is the San Joaquin Groundwater Basin, of which we're a small part. Again, stated, as previously stated, by no later than June 30th, 2017, we had to have the GSAs in place, and we did. Again, as previously stated, the groundwater sustainability plans must be in place by 2020. So, well, I seem to have left my laser pointer in the other room, but this is actually showing you the boundary for drainage for the San Joaquin groundwater basin. Again, as previously stated, Department of Water Resources Bulletin 118. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you. Got it. So essentially, this is your drainage. The San Joaquin groundwater basin is in this area. Again, as previously stated under Bulletin 118, San Joaquin groundwater basin is in a state of overdraft. Has been for many years. Some of you may recognize this map. This was brought forward by our groundwater report to the federal government back in 2004, part of our groundwater program. Again, it's a subbasin that covers approximately 70 square miles of the county. So everything we're talking about today really is limited to that area of the county. It's not a county boundary issue. It is actually it is actually just the 70 square miles. Let me get this. Okay, we'll make that big. Now, as we fly over the county and you're not seeing this, are you? Well, that's unfortunate. It's on my computer and not on yours. Anyway, we actually have a flyby, which is not, unfortunately, projecting right here for you. But what I would tell you is this is the East San Joaquin Groundwater Basin, sub-basin, now the East Side Groundwater Basin under the GSA. As you go over the county, you can see the depiction of the approximate depth and approximate yields depicted by color, all right? You'll notice it's the only part of the county really where you have really a fairly consistent look at the depth and the yield. If you're over in Campo Seco and I'm right on the side of Comanche Reservoir, you'll see I have 1,000-foot dusters out there, meaning they're drilling through a geology where that water just doesn't move through. Doesn't mean that over here where the lake is, doesn't mean water isn't available. It just doesn't move through that geology. So even though you'll see, and I apologize that this for some reason isn't projecting up here for you, even though you may be next to a large surface water body, doesn't necessarily mean it's impacting your groundwater and or recharging that groundwater. And that comes into play when the consultants, we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation, when the consultants talk about, are we in a state of overdraft, and why are we in a state of overdraft, and how much is surface water really assisting us? So development of the GSA, this is just background. Really what it comes down to is the reason Calaveras County is involved is because it actually can affect and does affect future general plans, okay? Because prior to any substantial amendment of a general plan, land use planning, agencies are required to review and consider a GSP. Now remember, the GSP hasn't been adopted yet. A GSP, and to refer any proposed general plan amendment to the local GSA for review. And the local GSA, again, is the East Side Groundwater Basin GSA. So as part of this process, the GSA is required to provide the local land use planning agency with the anticipated effects of a proposed land use plan amendment on the implementation of the GSP. Again, we're looking at the 70 square miles of Calaveras County as the GSA. And I can't overemphasize that because, again, we don't want people to confuse this with true county boundaries. A little more background. County representatives originally met with Stanislaus and CCWD initially to form the GSA and by the June 30th, 2017 deadline. They did meet that deadline. An MOU was put in place allowing the participating agencies to meet that deadline. And Calaveras County, we were a little late to the game on that. So even though the initial MOU supported the formation of the East Side San Joaquin GSA, which included Stanislaus, Rock Creek Water District, and CCWD, we needed to actually get in the game because as a county, we oversee the general plan. We also issue permits for well construction and destruction, if you'll recall, as stating about the original 1998 ordinance. So that does affect land use in the county. On May of 2017, the board did go ahead and pass a resolution with the county's intent to join that GSA under SGMA, and that notice was sent in to the Department of Water Resources for notice of intent in May of 2017, and so we are part of that East Side GSA. So if you look to your left here, this is Calaveras County. Obviously, Stanislaus County, this is the Rock Creek Water District. What we saw in the past, and you saw in the previous slide, was this area right here as the as the Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Subbasin, okay? The east side GSA now includes Stanislaus County, like trends, like needs, and the Rock Creek Water District, which, by the way, is a surface water source at this point. And if you look at this slide over here, you'll see the entire basin. Now, we're a pretty large GSA when you look at the entire basin, because there's 14 other GSAs in here, okay? But that kind of gives you an idea of what we're actually looking at and where our participation is. This is breaking up the basin into the different GSAs. And this is the slide that shows and names those GSAs. Woodbridge, which is this guy right here, has fallen out. So that makes us 15 agencies. Not to confuse, when you look at this legend, it's easy to go, oh, here's the subbasin boundaries and the model boundary, and that's actually, these are the items that make up the 15 GSAs. So again, made up of 15 GSAs, including us. The JPA was created foremost with a stated desire to only complete one GSP for the entire basin. We discussed that. The JPA does have a rigorous governance structure, and the JPA is administering the project. And the Department of Water Resources grant funds to complete the GSP. The Department of Water Resources has supplied approximately 75% of the funds through grants to put these GSAs and GSPs together, but the GSPs specifically. And then San Joaquin County has really stepped up to the plate, quite frankly, and as well they should, because when you think about the use of groundwater, you've got Stockton East, you've got Oakdale Irrigation District, you've got others that are in that basin that can be in a state of overdraft. So they have a real interest in this, certainly. But Stanislaus County themselves have really come to the fore, including even hosting the meetings of which Supervisor Mills and I have attended, and he's actually attended a lot more than I have, contracting with the consultants and acting as a GSP administrator and record keeper. So moving on to county participation, CCWD and Supervisor Mills have certainly been taking lead in terms of time and labor working on with the authority, the GSA, and as the GSP is being developed. Again, as previously stated, as the GSA and GSP ultimately directly affect land use planning and the general plan, the county should consider taking a more proactive approach in the GSA. Not to say that we haven't been proactive, but I will tell you that CCWD really did take the lead for the county over the last 4 years, and that's actually very much appreciated. There's a possibility that baton will be handed off, not today, and not necessarily, and certainly not next week, but maybe something for the board to consider in the future, and that's kind of why the review today, to kind of bring you up to speed, bring the board up to speed about what's happening with this law. It's obvious that we have a real interest in tracking what's happening with land use, and so that it's being adequately addressed by this board and by your staff. Ultimately, the board may wish to employ a land use expert with background in enforcement, background in development and ordinance and policy as it relates to water, groundwater wells, groundwater siting in the future. The board may also want to consider appointing a supervisor, and Supervisor Mills I know has been approached, but certainly it's a board decision, in terms of actually being the voting member on the GSA to the GSP. That member right now is Russ Thomas of the CCWD Board of Directors. Moving on to water balance. This is the consultant, actually there's a couple consultants, but the consultant that we're referring to here is Woodard and Curran. They built a hydrological conceptual model, and it really attempts to identify inflows and outflows within inside the basin. Our concern, Supervisor Mills and I have discussed this ad nauseum, is the fact that they're showing greater outflows in the east side groundwater basin than inflows. Doesn't make a lot of sense when you sense, when you are a source county of water. And we know that that water is flowing east to west. I think that that's truly built on statistical uncertainties, of which the consultant actually admits that, yes, there's some uncertainties. We'll discuss that a little bit more in a minute. And it's tied in with what they call deep percolation and stream seepage. Remember, I was talking about Comanche Reservoir not necessarily affecting that part of the groundwater basin. Even though the water's there, it doesn't move through that geology. Recharge, groundwater pumping, and boundary flow. So I would say, the other concern is that you'll notice that groundwater pumping really is fairly minimal in Calaveras County. Most of the water that's used for agriculture, we're mostly dry land farming here. And the board was just talking about Williamson Act. So on dry land farming, you certainly don't have this water supply. Where we do have water is on the Calaveras and the Stanislaus rivers. If that's used for agriculture, we believe that the consultant may have been identifying any kind of heavy agricultural. Now, what I mean by that, I'm talking about almonds or walnuts or the like that take quite a bit of water, as using groundwater, and they're therefore adding to our quote-unquote deficit, where in fact these people and these farmers are using surface water. So that's something that we are addressing. These are the uncertainties as provided by the consultant, saying from a deep percolation, 20% uncertainty, and you can see this as you go down from stream seepage down to boundary flow, and just going back to our point previously about who's using surface water versus who's using groundwater. Groundwater pumping is showing a 20% uncertainty right there. This is enough, and one of these may even be enough to show that we are actually in a positive flow rather than a negative flow. Again, on water balance, you can see this it's geologically dependent. We know that because we've got the tertiary river channels that we've talked about in the past that actually are the buried rivers. Probably a real significant significant inflow into the basin. I'll give you an example. When you go down the highway and you're at Toyon Park and you see that large clear well or storage tank, elevated storage tank, that used to be, if I recall correctly, a mill out there, a lumber mill out there. Lumber takes a lot of water when you're milling, right? That pump, if I recall this correctly, pumps about 300 gallons a minute. They're tied into a tertiary channel. 300 gallons a minute, and it's not limited necessarily to the amount of water that is in the ground. It's limited to the ability of that pump to pump so many gallons a minute. So geology is really critical here. Hydrology, that ties right in. Precipitation, of course, we know that. Fortunately, we've had a good year. Land use, minimal use of groundwater in Calaveras County. Most of you, probably 99% of your wells that are drilled in this county are for domestic drinking water purposes, and that's very minimal use. Evapotranspiration, and that means when your vegetation is giving off moisture during the day, that's evapotranspiration. Surface water deliveries and boundary flows. So with that said, that's kind of a quick down and dirty presentation on where we are with Sigma, on the GSAs and the GSPs. The intent of this item was to bring this to the board's attention. I know that some of this is a review to some of you, and to some of you it's not. But the idea is for the board to be aware that this is coming down the line, especially with the GSPs having to be adopted by the end of January 2020. So what will happen eventually is we will be seeing a document on that GSP for review by the county. And certainly that needs to be brought before the board, at least as a briefing, so the board understands, our part in the overall GSP, again, with the understanding that the GSA, the Eastside GSA, is really our agency. It's where we have a voice. It's where we can go ahead and make the difference. One of the things that I didn't really discuss earlier was when we were looking at when we were looking at the sub-basin as defined by Department of Water Resources, you'll notice that that it actually goes up into the, I love this, Microsoft wants to update my computer in the middle of a presentation. Of course they do. Let me go back up here for just a second. I think that's probably a good one to go from. Pardon me? Yeah, right there. That was it. No. Yeah, over in Ireland, even though I'm not Irish, that I know of. Actually, you notice that the sub-basin is up here in the Valley Springs area. That's really questionable. It's probably, the true basin probably ends right around here. And I'm saying that because Valley Springs Public Utility District is also tied into a tertiary channel. At least that's our belief. And why do we know that? Because everything that's east of their well versus west of their well will show a different, what they call a cone of depression. And I'm sorry I don't have a whiteboard, but I'd really bore you then. But essentially, you can actually, by looking at the cones of depressions, in other words, the static water level is higher on this end than it is on this end of their well. That tells me that it's not truly a groundwater basin, but it's probably a tertiary channel that they're tying into. That, and double with the fact of the amount of volume that's associated with that as well. So that is something else that we've talked about. Supervisor Mills and I have talked about that as well regarding what do we do with the modification of this basin, and when do we do it? Maybe it's after the GSP. Why is that on our interest? Because why would we be regulating this part of the county if we don't have to be? Essentially, and why would we have the state telling us what we have to watch for groundwater in this part of the county? Not that we're not responsible, but why does that have to be an issue with the whole SGMA process? We think not. So with that, I will turn this over to the board for any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this informational presentation?
Peter Martin is here from CCWD. I'd like to, have you got anything to add to this, Peter?
Yeah, apologies for my tardiness. I think Brian did a really good job. I did catch most of your presentation, Brian. I think just, I want to note that, while we are very heavily focused on getting the groundwater sustainability plan done by the end of January of 2020, that is not the end of this process. It's a 20-year plan. The groups will have to get together, the GSAs, and revisit that plan. There's a possibility of different off-ramps there depending upon how things move forward. And then also I wanted to point out that the GSA, the way that the MOU is structured is that the authorities mostly reside with the individual boards. So of the 4 entities that are in the Eastside GSA, I think it's prudent for each of those boards to approve that groundwater sustainability plan. So it's good and timely that Brian's starting to bring this to you piece by piece. A draft groundwater sustainability plan is scoped to be out by June of this year, so it'll be out to the public for review at that point. So it would be good that at some point we start to continue to, if possible, make these briefings or at least make these materials available to this board so that they're fully prepared to adopt this plan after September. Yeah, things are slowly
Just
popping out right now.
visually so people can see. This is just the last 2 months of what's going on and the details with the process here. There's too much information for somebody just to grab onto and get a quick understanding of it. And I appreciate the effort that CCWD has had and getting John Kramer involved in it early on and having your legal counsel there too, because it seems like the lawyers are talking more than the staff here lately.
Yeah, there's a lot to do with regards to policy setting on this, and I think that's important that the counties, particularly, CCWD can provide so much information from a technical standpoint. We have done groundwater management plans over the last decade. We put through a groundwater elevation monitoring program in the west part of the county. But really, when it comes to making sure that these work together with your general plan and your permitting processes for wells in the future, I think it's important that the county provides some additional input at that time. And that may not need to come right away, but as you guys are going through your additional processes administratively, this is going to have to be incorporated into those decision-making processes. So,
I'm going to only give my opinion that Woodard and Kern has made some serious miscalculations in their water balance, and that they, as you know, you have put forth CCWD, you're using surface water, the majority of it there in Rancho. How does that play in, that surface water problem that they don't seem to recognize play into this whole thing?
So yeah, there's obviously a model there's two models. There's the geological conceptual model, which is more about the geology of the basin and how water moves, and then there's the actual water model that takes into account things like precipitation, inflow, outflow, things like that. And as Brian pointed out, he had that graphic up there. There's quite a bit of uncertainty with each of those individual inputs, and while they are sort of granular, they've used sort of these nodes that are, very small. I think they're maybe less than a quarter of a mile each. They're trying to apply all those inputs across 13,000, 14,000 different, spatial. Sorry, it's hard to explain without graphics, but basically you've got an overlay of that entire basin, 13,000 individual little pieces, and you apply that, across the basin as far as how much it rains, how much surface water is being taken out, how much groundwater is being taken out. And so there's definitely, models can be picked apart in any way, and I think anyone will tell you that, and attorneys, spend a lot of their time doing that in many cases. So I think going forward, we acknowledge that there's a lack of data. And so part of the plan is going to be trying to, fill those data gaps and, perhaps revisit them. Maybe, I think that it's been talked about several times within the advisory committee that maybe this basin isn't even in a state of overdraft anymore, based upon going on models that were created back in the 80s or 60s for the entire basin. So there's still a lot to be learned, but we do know we have a deadline to get a plan by the end of January of 2020. And so that is what we're focused on, but there are opportunities to learn and make that plan as adaptive as possible and incorporate new data as well.
So this board really needs to be thinking about answering the questions of where do they fit into this overall process? What is going to be the staffing requirements? What are the cost structures that are going to be involved? And to what level we are involved? That's what the board needs to start thinking about. I look at what was said to me by the city of Stockton in the last meeting is that Calaveras County is possibly pumping too much water up here and it's affecting their wells. And whether you know it or not, there's 23 wells in the city of Stockton. They're pumping water. 25% of their water comes out of the ground. The rest of it comes from Stockton East, and yet they're not willing to resolve the problem. City of Oakdale literally has 10,000 acre feet of water available to them as groundwater, and they refuse to use it, use the surface water because it's more costly to treat. Right. So they're not solving the problem. City Oakdale Irrigation District in 2014, just before the drought, sold $4 million worth of surface water and then resultingly pumped irrigation water to make up for the shortfall. I mean, we have to realize that everybody that's in this game isn't playing it the same way. And that are we a part of the problem, or are we part of the solution? Ultimately, we're the giver of water here, not the taker. Correct. And I think a good majority of the area that's been identified as our portion of the basin is actually ancient water. And if we could look at the 118 process and find out where we can create that off-ramp and get some of these boundary lines to be more realistic to our geological formations, that might be one of the answers. But for Lindsay Martin to suddenly just drop out of the blue on us a CASJAM well H within the last week, we'd never discussed that as an East Side GSA, and here they are. They're suddenly going to want to drop a well in Stan County, and they give us a whole bunch of parcel numbers to go look at. There has to be a more comprehensive approach of where we are in this picture. And right now, the Kona Depression sits right over Stockton East, whether they want to admit it or not. So are we part of a larger picture and that we have to contribute substantially because we have a substantial amount of land mass here, like what happened when we set up this cost of the plan? Or are we going to say, no, we're a contributor in another way, so therefore you need to take that into account? I don't want to see this county saddled with millions of dollars in costs to maintain the monitoring programs that literally are created by other water agencies in other counties. Sorry to get off on a rant, but this thing has been quite irritating for quite some time. I've been monitoring it for over 4 years. So what do you need from us, Peter?
I think, just, there's obviously multiple departments within the county's purview that are going to need to take a look at this plan and see how it impacts things like land use decisions, perhaps your general plan. I know you're getting some real momentum on that. I'm not, I'm hoping that this doesn't create an issue with that, but, because I think everyone would like to see some momentum on that. And then also, your well permitting programs, perhaps for these portions of the county. And then, I think just making sure that there are the appropriate ordinances or whatever's necessary in place to make sure that once this plan is adopted, that the objectives are, thought of carefully. But yeah, I think there's a lot of concern about how costs are going to be shared, and that's been discussed quite a bit at length. Right now, we have not committed to doing anything. We do know that there are entities out there that would like to get projects done, and they propose those projects. Those projects could very well tip the balance of what's the shortages in the entire basin. They may be going forward with those projects whether this plan happens or not. So there's a possibility that things could right themselves pretty rapidly if there was the right funding from those different agencies. But I do believe that there is going to be some commitment either to the administration of that plan at some point by the Calaveras County Water District and potentially the county. And also I believe that we'll see some need to contribute to data and things like that long term.
Yeah. And Peter, they've alluded several times to how to fund this, and they've talked about a 218 process and fees for people who live within that 70 square miles as being participants to this funding for this. I think that needs to be a broader discussion. If they think that we're going to go out there and start.
Yeah, as a GSA, you are in control of your own destiny locally, so there's
Correct.
No way that some other entity, perhaps outside the county, is going to impose any fees on this county. So at least we can, like I said, the planning process, while it's happening at the Joint Powers Authority, because that was a cost savings measure, it's a $2.2 million plan for which the GSA has contributed about a little less than $40,000 collectively. To have to try to do that within our own GSA would have been a monumental cost. So there is some cost savings with that planning process, but going forward, it's really going to be the GSAs that are going to be implementing a lot of this. So it will be the entities within Calaveras County and that portion of Stanislaus County that's not already covered. So.
Thank you.
I just would like to jump in real quick. I apologize. I was able to actually pull this up. This is the flyover that I was trying to share with the board, showing, and you'll see why I'm taking the extra minute to show this to you. Again, you can see the clustering here. As we move around and we look, and this is built on real data. This is built on GIS data. And some of you have seen this before. But if you look at this, again, it's a better view of really the fairly consistent depths and certainly the yields. The depths vary likely because people are stopping to drill at a certain level because they've already attained their 5 gallons a minute or 10 gallons a minute, or others maybe have gone deeper thinking the same thing, but the yields really are the same. Again, this is all based off of real data and GPS insights and then building GIS data behind it. So I wanted the board to actually see what that looks like because it really gives a depiction of that true basin, the East Side Basin. And again, depicted from underneath, that gives you a real good view. These red lines you see here, which is no water at all, these are actually further out in the county, so it's a little bit of an overlay there. And that's probably the best picture of the basin right there from underground. And then you're back up top. So I just wanted to share that with the board very briefly.
Thank you very much, Brian. Any further questions from the board?
I do. I keep hearing the word contribute. I'm getting a little nervous with that word. Is the 9,900 Calaveras count, not CCWD's, Calaveras County's share of the plan of the GSP?
Yes, it was the GSA actually, and that both CCW and the county agreed to contribute the 9,000. We still have another 4,900 due in July.
It says CCWD and the county agree to
Both.
contribute
Right.
9,000
Right.
to the GSP. So we're each contributing 9,000. Is that correct?
If I remember this correctly,
Yes.
the idea
Yes.
is yes, it is. It
Okay.
is. And then, of course, it breaks out the 25% assigned to CCWD and 25% to the county, and Stanislaus is picking up the remaining 50%.
All that's like, that paragraph was a little too convoluted.
Okay.
I want to know what it is costing the county general fund for our participation, $9,000.
Yes, and then in July, with the new budget, there will be still another $4,900 we'll be paying, so we
But
paid.
that's a portion of the 9,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So as we move forward, if I heard Mr. Martin correctly, there will be other expenses
That
to
would
the
be-
county
that would be
for
my
how
understanding.
we absorb the information.
Yes, that would be my understanding as well.
What became pretty clear to me is if we're an outflow county,
Mhm.
we're going to be limited to parcel splits and subdivisions at that end of the county.
You know, I don't know if DWR is actually going to put that on us. I think part of what will help us more than anything is demonstrating that, first of all, we are not in a negative balance. So if we're not in negative balance and you're looking at Staunton East directly to the west of the county in a cone of depression, I think it's very difficult for DWR to argue and say, oh, by the way, you can't use that groundwater. Now, I will tell the board that I did sit on the Governor's Office of Planning and Research as SIGMA was being put together on how this was going to be implemented. At that time, and I believe it's still the case, the state was looking at regulating anybody that was pulling over 2 acre-feet a year. So really that kicks you into agriculture or it kicks you into a public water system, but not an individual domestic well usually.
Just looking at what's coming on. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Mills, your lights on?
Well, at some point, I think that if we're going to revise the MOU, we're going to be needing to look at some staff time, legal time, a consultant, much like what CCWD is doing now. That's just going to be a necessary part of this. So whether that's shared jointly by the GSA, Eastside GSA, or how that's to work out, I think that's a question that remains to be answered as well.
Agreed, and actually CCWD right now has been using Condor Earth Technologies, correct?
Thank you. Let me see if there's any public comment on this item.
Alice Gallad, Taxpayer Association. This is pretty complex. I think there seems to be a question of what rights do other counties have to groundwater, which may come from our groundwater. I'm not sure about that. The next question is, we know, or we think we know, that rainwater retention is sustainable for residential. In other words, the rain that hits the roof can be retrieved and stored, and it would pretty much equal the water use of a residence. So it would seem, if government's not involved with this thing, and we do have a depletion of well water, that we would naturally, or the property owners would be responsible for their own water, would need to go to some sort of rainwater retention, or especially in drought years. And a lot of this seems to occur based on need, not what the governor says or the legislature says. So as we increase the amount of regulation or preparation for regulation to control groundwater, we need to take in consideration the natural market that would develop for surface water retention. Makes sense to me. And so what do we do? Well, if we want to protect property rights, we have to look in terms of what the property owner would want to do or should be allowed to do. And if we do that, I think we'll find less need for government involvement and more responsibility of planning on the private sector to bring solutions if they want to have water on their property. I don't know if that's too complicated, but it seems to me to make sense. Thank you.
I'm Will Moore in Rancho Calaveras, and kind of to rebut what Al just said, everybody lives downstream from somebody. So who has the upstream rights or downstream rights? But that's a different issue. Anyhow, about this groundwater, I think, there are 22 rivers flowing out of 20 counties that contribute to this San Joaquin Sacramento River system. And I think returning beaver to the headwaters of all those streams would do more to add to the groundwater and flood control than any of these plans we're making. That's just a comment. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
You're the last speaker on the side.
I just had a couple of questions. Has any sinking ground been located in Calaveras County yet? As we know, it's in the Fresno area. And for those areas where sinking ground has already been detected, what possible solutions or ideas might be thought of, if anything can be done about areas where the ground is sinking because of over pumping? And then my final thought, of course, is always that I think a lot of this problem is overdevelopment in areas where there are minimal resources. And until we address overdevelopment, or in essence overpopulation, maybe this is going to be an issue that keeps recurring over and over, and the headwaters, or what you would call us guys, the end of the foothills where the water kind of comes out of the ground, are those how those areas are impacted, and what can be done in the long range with a big overview of the whole issue of society about depleted groundwater, pumping, etc.?
Any final thoughts before we close this? This is just informational. Brian, I think you want to say something, and then Dennis, and let's try to move on.
Please.
I'll just go ahead and address those items real quickly. Nobody owns groundwaters of the state. I think that's very important, unlike surface waters, unless you're in an adjudicated basin. And rainwater detention, my understanding is that I don't know if there's regulations coming down the pike on that or not. I've heard a rumor of that. And again, I can't but overstate and state that nobody owns groundwaters of the state, and therefore that's why SGMA in part was necessary, because whoever gets to it first. So I'll just leave my comments at that.
Thank you. Supervisor Mills?
There's no known subsidence of ground in Calaveras County. The only area of subsidence that we are aware of in the San Joaquin Basin is the southwest corner, and is clay soils where water is removed, and that's what causes the ground. And you cannot put water back in it and like a sponge expect it to expand back. It does not do that.
That is correct.
And the Fremont Canal is a good example of a subsidence problem that gives water through the Porterville area, Orange Cove, Porterville area. So I appreciate the board's willingness to want to listen to this presentation. There is a lot more coming down the pike as we move from the planning phase into the monitoring phase, which begins in 2020. Now, the neighbors to the north and south of us are not in a high risk area, so therefore they can get to 2022 before they have to put their plan together. But we're all going to be in it to some degree. It's just a matter of how far in it does Calaveras County need to be.
Very much. Supervisor Hoffman?
I'm sorry, but I do have a couple items. So just overdraft here, there's 14 GSAs.
There are 15 GSAs.
15 GSAs right now. And each GSA is supposed to come up with their own GSP.
No, the 15 GSAs work together to form one GSP.
Okay, thank you.
All right, last call. Thank you very much, Brian, appreciate
Thank you.
it. Folks, we got one item left, and then I'm sorry, Supervisor Mills, please.
I'd like to make an announcement. I do have a commitment at 1 o'clock this afternoon on a memorial service for a long-term person in Vallecito, so I will need to leave. So, thank you all for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. We have one item left. Madam Clerk, number 22.
Item 22 is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, the appointment of applicants to serve on various committees, commissions, advisory boards, and county service areas. So I'd like to go through and read off the applications and vacancies, and if there's any that need to be pulled out and acted upon separately, if you could just let me know. Otherwise, it's customary to have them all acted upon at once. The first is, and I wanted to note a typo in my staff memo. I'm sorry, I had listed Area 12 Agency on Aging Advisory Council twice. So it isn't any different. I just goofed. Okay, so the first is for the Ag Advisory Committee. One vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2021 in District 3. We have an application from Stuart Mast, who is an incumbent. For the Area 12 Agency on Aging Advisory Council, we have two vacancies for terms expiring 5/1/2023, and we have an application from Clyde Clapp and an application from Kevin Ost. On the Fish and Game Commission, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2020 for a District 4 representative, and that is for Trevor Arola. On the Mental Health Board, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2021 for a family member or consumer. We have an application from Stephen Sullivan, and we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2021 for a general public representative, and we have an application from Jana Carter. On the Public Educational and Governmental PEG Television Commission, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2020 for a District 1 representative, and Mike Taylor has submitted an application. And then lastly, on the West Point Cemetery District, we have two vacancies, both expiring 12/31/2019. We have an application from Judith Garcia and an application from Kirk Smith. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anybody want to pull one of these names? Supervisor Stopper?
I'd like to pull Area 12 Agency on Aging, the two applications there for discussion.
Okay. Anybody else want to pull an item? Perhaps we could move the remainder and then come back and discuss that?
You can, or we can discuss it now, and then they may subsequently be acted upon together. I don't know.
I think that's the way to go.
Okay. So
Very
did you have a
well.
question that I could answer?
Both of these people, I've received numerous communications from people throughout the area about these applicants. Both of these are related people going for the same board?
They are. And their applications have been vetted through the Area 12 Agency on Aging and recommended that they be appointed.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on this?
Our rep on
Supervisor Callaway, you're a rep.
As the board's representative on Area 12 Agency on Aging, I am not supporting these appointments,
either.
either of them.
Supervisor Toffenali, did you want to say something? No?
Well, I just, going back to the clerk's statement about they've been vetted, and that's how they ended up here. They had to be vetted through that agency, correct?
They do.
Yeah. So the vetting is your rep, Marita, none of that goes by you?
No, not as a board member.
Not as a board member?
So let's pull that one aside. Is there any other issues and any of the other items on there? 1 through 6 items, or just this one is the one, right?
The only thing that I could add is that on the Fish and Game Commission, I did previously speak with Supervisor Mills, and he told me to expect this application. So I think it would
I'm going to
be
suggest
okay.
that we move this, that we move the remainder of the item, excluding number 2, and then we circle back on that one, just so we get this business done.
Okay.
So is there so we're going to have public comment on all the items except for the Area 12 Aging. So any public comment on those others? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move the remainder.
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenali, second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carries 4-0. Supervisor Mills absent. So let's go back to the Area 12, the 2 applicants for the Area 12 Commission on Aging. Shall we just call a motion on this? It's an up or down? Oh, excuse me, public comment.
Public comment.
I heard that, George.
Okay.
You want to have some discussion on the board? Public comment. Area 12, Commission on Aging.
Chair and Supervisors, my name is Rich Corvello, resident of Valley Springs. I'm also a volunteer through Common Ground. I was forwarded a copy of the letter that I just handed in from another volunteer that has some real concerns with Mr. Clapp. I'd like to try to get through the letter that I received. I have had limited contact with Mr. Clapp in the community since moving here. I have seen him in passing a few times, but have rarely spoken to him. My main contact with him occurred at the Valley Springs site while serving senior meals. Regarding the date and the time of this event, it has already been reported. I've been contacted regarding it and under the impression the matter has been settled. However, I've been informed that Mr. Clapp and a family member are being considered to be appointed to the Area 12 Advisory Council. I come from a background of 15 years in law enforcement prior to my retirement. I try to conduct myself in a way that does not bring any embarrassment or disrespect to Common Ground or other agencies I'm involved with or representing. With that said, I cannot and will not tolerate acts of bullying or intimidation to me or to others in my presence. Mr. Clapp came into the Valley Springs site and began yelling at volunteers about a rumor he heard at a local hair salon. His actions and that of the woman with him not only interfered with our service, but it got to the point where I had to step between him and the person he was raising his voice to in the kitchen and told him and his companion to end it. We're trying to serve food to the seniors and he was disrupting that. I repeatedly had to raise my voice over his to tell him to back away from the service area. Mr. Clapp returned to the site at a later date. The site manager and I took him aside respectfully and privately asked him to leave because people were not comfortable with him there. Not only the volunteers, but some of the seniors who were there for lunch were also uncomfortable because of his previous outburst. When we asked him to leave the center, he kept returning, and we had to contact the sheriff's department before he would actually leave the property. I do not feel Mr. Clapp would be a good representative of any agency involved with Common Ground program. I have witnessed firsthand his bullying tactics and unprofessional behavior. If his appointment is confirmed, I feel many volunteers would be reluctant to continue to participate in the program, and some who need the program would feel uneasy showing up if he were there. My personal opinion is there are better and more professional people out there who could be a good representative and liaison. I also feel that I would have to document any interaction with Mr. Clapp because this would become uncomfortable, hostile, and an adversarial environment in which to volunteer based on my previous encounters. I volunteer with great groups at both the Burson and Valley Springs sites. The fact is we are there for the people we are serving. We're not there to argue, intimidate, or push any agenda. We work well together, and I personally would like to continue that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Will?
I'm Will Moore from Rancho Calaveras. I want to read a email that I got from a person who had some interactions with Mr. Clapp. An episode occurred this past January 9th at about 11 a.m. in the barber's chair on the terrace. I was promoting the Sweetheart Supper that supports the youth center and Calaveras Volunteer Center. I asked the owner if I could place some small flyers on the counter. He said yes, so I put the stack down. When I asked if I could put a flyer in the window, Clyde jumped up and said, "No, this isn't Clyde's barber shop, but it's his office away from home," or whatever. And then he picked up the flyers I had put on the counter and called me a dirty whore and a pig, while informing me that he badmouths me every day he can to anyone because I'm nothing more but a whore and a pig. I asked him to hand me back the flyers. Instead, he began to rip them up and took them outside while continuing to call me names. That evening, my husband and I went to a dinner at the golf course. Clyde was there and tried to get my husband to hit him by calling me a whore and saying "F you" to my husband. Instead, my husband informed everyone in the room what Clyde had said. Everyone gasped. My husband and I left as we had a meeting at Wallace Burson Association to attend. A few weeks later, I went to Marval to order food for the Sweetheart Supper. She's the fundraiser for this event. As I approached, I checked to see if the flyer at the display case was still there, as I had to replace the flyer several times prior. It was gone, so I put another one up and went into the store. As I was leaving, I saw Clyde and his son leaving the area of the display case. My flyer was taken down. In its place was a campaign misinformation piece about Ben Stopper written in Spanish. I confronted them, asking them about taking down my flyer. They just giggled and ran off. I urge you to consider these extreme behaviors while determining whether or not to appoint Clyde and his son to any committee. I can't vouch personally for any of this. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I can vouch for the integrity of the person who's telling this story. I know her well from public service and so forth, and I believe her story. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Other public comments? Bonnie?
As you know, I serve on the IHSS Advisory Committee, and about a year and a half ago, one of the members brought it to my attention that there was a legal case involving Mr. Clapp being accused of financial elder abuse. And not being one to buy into rumors, I did some research and got online and found the court documents. I also went to the people that were suing Mr. Clapp to get their story of what was happening. And I was real uncomfortable with Mr. Clapp on the committee, knowing some of the allegations. He remained on the committee until the end of his service. But I also have been bullied and intimidated by Mr. Clapp in the past. And although I have nothing personal against his son, I do know often that the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And I feel that having the son participate, they would be one and the same attitude. And I also would recommend not approving either of these two gentlemen to serve on a committee that serves the elderly and the disabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Public comment.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Common Ground Senior Services. So Clyde Clapp has applied to be a member of the Area 12 Advisory Council Board. I strongly oppose his appointment to this committee. Mr. Clapp has one agenda: what benefits Mr. Clapp. Common Ground has been a provider of senior services and have contracted for the past 18 years with the Area Agency on Aging to serve seniors in Amador and Calaveras County. Mr. Clapp, in his very short 2-year term as supervisor of Calaveras County and also the assigned supervisor to the Area 12 JPA board, has never supported or recognized the efforts of our organization. Instead, in my humble opinion, created dissension and conflict between Common Ground Senior Services and Area 12 Agency on Aging. First, ex-supervisor Mr. Clapp, at an Area 12 Agency on Aging JPA meeting, held up a contract award for fiscal year 17-18. The Calaveras Cannabis Association had donated a Jeep, a 4x4 Jeep, to the Meals on Wheels program. Mr. Clapp, at that meeting, accused Common Ground of receiving, quote, drug monies. We received a donated vehicle. There was no quid pro quo in receiving these vehicles. Second, during Mr. Clapp's re-election campaign and while participating, as you heard, at the congregate site in Valley Springs, ex-supervisor Mr. Clapp's behavior towards the volunteers at the site was rude, accusatory, and offensive. The volunteers felt bullied and threatened by him, and he was asked to leave. When he refused, the volunteers contacted the sheriff's department to intervene. And I knew about that because they had called me first, and I suggested to them that they contact the sheriff if they felt uncomfortable. With these incidences, Mr. Clapp made statements in the community and in the media inferring that Common Ground was being investigated for unlawful activities, none which were substantiated. Mr. Clapp has never made any efforts to apologize to Common Ground for his ignorant statements. Most importantly, Mr. Clapp has not made any attempt to apologize to the volunteers at the Valley Springs site for the offensive and unacceptable and unprofessional treatment they received, especially in light that he was supervisor at the time. Clyde Clapp has only one agenda: what benefits Clyde Clapp. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment on this item? If there is, if we could just keep track, maybe we could line up to 5 there so we keep this moving.
Hi, my name is Janice A. Cox, and I live in Rancho Calaveras. I'm a volunteer for Common Ground at the Valley Springs Veterans Hall. And I was witness to his behavior on when he came in and started yelling at all of us. And I just don't think he has the empathy to deal with Area 12's agenda to take care of our senior citizens. He's not a nice man. Thanks.
Thank you. George, is there any other speakers? George, you'll be our last. Excuse me. Al, you'll be our last.
To me, and to the board members that served with Mr. Clapp. This man has no business being on any board representing Calaveras County. The things that he's done, one instance, I was over getting gas. I had gone over to Jackson, and so I stopped by the gas station, and I parked my vehicle so I could get gas. He comes roaring in there with his truck, gets out of his truck, and tells me that I am not liked by anybody. I don't care. I didn't get born into this world for people to like me. I got born into this world to do good for people. And as a retired law enforcement person, I always attempted to do good whenever there was a situation. I have witnessed his behavior with the store manager at Marvell. He said he was going to sue him and sue this person, sue that person. You folks that are not new on the board, you know what he's about. When this man stands up there on the dais and says to Jack Garamendi, yeah, we're going to make sure you don't get reelected, or we're going to make sure that you are basically the same thing. It was just so unprofessional, I couldn't believe it. And two of you were on the board at the time, and if you have any conscience at all, you will not approve him. You've seen his antics time and time again. He leaves the meetings early. He has to go out and check on his dog. He's got to do all of these other things except do what he was voted in to do. I served on the Area 12 on Aging for several years, and I've seen his behavior at the meetings as well. I mean, I could go on ad nauseum, but I think that I'll cut it off so we can get this unfortunate thing taken care of.
Al? Are there any other speakers after Al? Al, will you be our last speaker?
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. There may be an opportunity to clean up the vetting process. I don't think this should occur. It'd probably be a good idea to identify the people who did the vetting and perhaps share the videotape of this presentation with them. That may be enough for them in the future to be very careful when they clear somebody for a position of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, I'll bring it back to the board. I want to make one quick point. We acknowledge all applicants in their thing, and we don't have a vetting. So if you apply for something, that's going to come before this board.
So if I could just say one thing real quick. It is a process of the Area 12 Agency on Aging. Any applications that come to me, if they're vetted through my office to meet minimum qualifications, that's one thing, but this is a different process. It's not one that once they give us the yes, we make that recommendation, then it comes to the board for them to make a decision. But that's the only part we have in the vetting process.
So they are doing the
vetting.
We won't have a debate on that. Let me ask real quick, is there a motion to move this forward? Going once, going twice. It dies for lack of a motion. Excuse me. Happy hands. Thank you.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, Board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, such as mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
Who wants to start? Supervisor
I
Keller,
will.
your light's
I'll
on.
start. I've mentioned it at 2 other board meetings, and this morning we had 2 dispensary owners come to the board and make a plea, and I totally agree with them. We have a draft ordinance, as I understand, updating the 1791 dealing with dispensaries, and my understanding is that we're just asking that the ordinance be updated to incorporate state law that they have to follow anyway, and to add adult use. That's it.
Do you want to do a poll on that so we can get it on the
Yeah.
agenda?
Yes.
Is there, this is to bring back the
1791.
1791 on dispensaries updated. Supervisor Toffenelli? Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, the draft of 17.91 was done a while back, so staff would certainly have to go back through, confirm whether any changes need to be updated to it, and it would still have to go through, it was my understanding that it died at the Planning Commission level, so it would still have to go through the process. So if the board is inclined to direct staff to, this is on staff's radar, but from a staff perspective, we have many ordinances that are being worked on. So if this board wants staff to process 17.91, just from a staff level, I would like to know the priority in which what are the timeframes in which this board is wanting to see this brought forward, because we have many things that are pressing and are time sensitive.
Well, I would imagine, I'll let the board address this, but I would imagine we don't know all the things you're working on. I think if the board decides, then yes, it becomes a priority. Move it up.
The reason, for me, for several reasons. We've had 2 business owners, and there's one other. They've laid employees off. We're reducing money. We have Tuolumne that's going to be opening. And if we say that we're a business-oriented county, then just because it's a dispensary doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing something. And so I thought if all we're going to be doing is updating it to include current state law, we're not going to be doing anything extra, and add adult use and the conversation. At what point then could staff bring it back?
I guess my question would be, does this board want to see 17.91 or 17.91 dispensary ordinance or 17.95 cannabis ordinance first?
Is that a either or?
I'm asking which one do you want staff to work on and process first?
What is I guess I was misunderstood in my conversations with staff that 17.91 wasn't really going to take as much time as 1795.
It likely wouldn't. I'm just asking for clarification on timing as far as what staff needs to be working on.
I think let's decide whether we want to see it first. I don't think that, obviously, when we can discuss what staff workload is once we decide if we're going to do this. So, who wants to see this come back? Supervisor Callaway is a yes. Supervisor Stauber?
Yes, depending on priority.
Supervisor Toffenelli?
Sure.
Okay, so we have a consensus, including myself, to bring this forward. It's hard for me to imagine that revising a small ordinance is the same as writing an entire cannabis growing policy, but perhaps that's, how do we want to discuss that? Supervisor Callaway?
I guess my recommendation would be maybe if you discussed it with the CAO, council, and the planning director, and to see.
I would just remind the board that this is not on the agenda, so if the board has
Right.
directed staff to work on it, then certainly the CAO will work with my office, with planning, and we will work on, we will advise the board as to timeframes. 17.91, as one of the public speakers said today, has not been modified since 2005. So there will be some changes that will need to be made, and there will be time and resources necessary to fully bring it up to current state law, as well as making it adult use rather than just medical. So all of those things now that we have the poll, certainly my office will work with the CAO's office and planning, and bring all of them forward as quickly and expeditiously as possible.
That'd be great. In fact, why don't we get together at the next agenda review, and you could tell us what the timeline's going to be on that. I think we've got direction.
I'm leaving, today I have the the CSAC legislative conference, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be at Earth Days and Angels. I'll be at Airport Days, and I'll be at a fundraiser for the Barnwell Library.
Thank you. Supervisor Stopper?
I went, let's see, I went to the Sheriff's Association fundraiser this last Saturday. Good time, real good success. Prior to that, the Monday prior, I was at the Motherlow Job Training Agency committee meeting, and we appointed Kathy Galino as our economic representative from Calaveras County for all 5 counties in that. Just working forward on a lot of possibilities and bringing more jobs into the area, and that's about the sum of it for right now.
Thank you. Supervisor Toffenali?
Yes, I attended several committee meetings, but the one that I have to report out on, it has effect on not only this board, but constituents of the county, is Mountain Valley EMS. As everyone knows, that we're looking to have a new contract and an RFP going out. The current contract with ambulance providers ends in 2020. And I have to report that they shall be bringing, Mountain Valley EMS will be bringing the RFP to this board for its approval at the end of May, first meeting in June possibly, and then that RFP, once our approval, will go out, and it'll be out for several months, looking for people to bid on it, and or agencies to bid on it, and we're looking to be on schedule to have it in place before June 30th, 2020.
Thank you very much. I will let you guys know, I got a short notice phone call the other day, and someone, Frank Bigelow, met me for breakfast at Frank's, which was pretty nice. It's not every day we get a Silverman driving by and looking for a breakfast date. It was very cool. Nope, I bought him lunch. I brought him breakfast. But I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank our interim CAO, Manuel Lopez. I think this is the last time you're going to sit up here with us. And I've never seen someone so happy for a meeting to end. But thank you so much for all you've done for our county, and come back and help us out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Board owes you a great deal.
Thank you, CAO Manuel. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all the help every one of you, including Supervisor Mills, has provided for the last 4+ months. It's been really interesting, and I think we've made a lot of progress. Since I was here a couple of years ago, I think we're on the right direction. We just need to keep going in the right direction. And I think this county has a great opportunity to become a factor in the foothills, certainly, and perhaps even in the state. You have a lot of great talent here. You just need to provide them, in many cases, resources to get things moving and brought to you as quickly as possible.
I think he's lobbying for money for staff.
I am.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Any other announcements? Madam Council, Madam Clerk, thank you. We stand adjourned. We sit adjourned. We're out of here.
I have things for you to sign, but don't be out of here.
Yeah.